to another edition of The Proffer. Let me introduce first my co-host, Juliet. This is our second episode together, and today we have a great show. We're honored to be able to sit down with Larry Mazza. Larry has probably the greatest story in the history of organized crime. It's interesting at every level. Larry's a gentleman, and we really appreciate you taking the time to let us interview you. So thank you.
I want to thank you and Juliet for inviting me. I'm the one that should be honored, and I am. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here.
So listen, why don't we start at the very beginning? Brooklyn, New York. Dad's a fireman. Mom works in a bank, right?
Yep.
What is your childhood like?
Somebody described my childhood once as Leave It to Beaver. And it really makes sense because all the kids I grew up with were the same. We went to school, had great parents that all worked. Sometimes both the mom and dad worked. My dad was a fireman, very proud of that, lieutenant. My mom had a career in a bank, but she was able to be home when we needed her to be home at certain ages and then could go back and work part-time. I went to Catholic school. I had nuns showing me the way of life. And I was always a little worried about them because they were mean sometimes. The teachers I wasn't too scared of. But I made it through elementary school. I played every sport there is to play. Went on to high school, continued to play different sports, and ultimately made it all the way through to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And I spent about a year and a half there. And I had numerous jobs along the way. I was always working and hustling. I was growing up with a bright future.
Yeah. And eventually, as the story goes, you take a job at a supermarket. You're working in the supermarket, you're doing deliveries, and you meet Linda Shiro.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us just how that happened?
Well, like I said, I had a bunch of jobs. Started out as a newspaper delivery boy, then worked in a catering hall as a busboy. Those normal, I guess, progression of jobs that a lot of kids probably did. And then one day, I was on my way to the schoolyard to play football. And a buddy of mine pulls up in a van and says, "Hey, La, my partner called in sick today." This is new. This is something I've never really said before, but I just thought about it with all the jobs. So you got an exclusive here. And his name was Raymond. I don't know if we should use his last name for no other reason. They may not want it. But he says, "Would you come to work with me today? I needed a partner, and we're delivering groceries." He says, "You'll probably make $100 in tips." So I says, "Yeah, I can play football anytime." I went with him. They liked me, and they hired me in dances. I wish they didn't like me, but they did, and now they hired me. So I became, in time, the head delivery guy that had brought in other people now to work under me. And anyway, so yeah, I was working as a delivery boy, among other things at the store. And I used to deliver to houses, and typically it was only the housewives that were home. And a few times it got a little hairy for me. I was 17 years old. I was in good shape. I didn't have big problems getting girls. So anyway, I had a few run-ins, but this one in particular, Linda Shiro, she was very, very attractive, very, very convincing. And I hate to use the word seduce because that gives it a bad feel, but I was seduced, and then it became a mutual thing. So we had an affair, and we became lovers and spent a lot of time together.
And she was straightforward that she was married and all that, or did it?
At the very beginning, it was unspoken about her marital status. She didn't say anything. After the first few times together, I heard she had kids because I had to go home because she had to pick up the kids in the morning or pick them up for school. So now I knew, but I'm still...
Put two together, but
I really don't want to know at this point.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
I'm starting to have fun, and I'm starting to get feelings for her. But after, a couple of months, I'll say, she tells me that she's married.
But she doesn't tell you who she's married to.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, she tells me his name is Charles. Okay? And now I know there's this guy, Charles, that's never home. He's always out somewhere, so I'm putting in my head he's a traveling salesman. He's some I would have been going.
Yeah.
I wasn't that smart or savvy to think that. I just said traveling salesman or a big doctor.
He's just not home, and that's all
He's
that
not
really
home.
matters, right?
Right. So now it goes on for a few more months, and she starts telling me more about him. Okay, and as we go along, there's some things that we can come back to and say, do you think that's when she told him or whatever? But I'm jumping the gun. At that point, she's just telling me about him and that he's a great guy. He's very influential. He could do a lot for you. Because now she really wants me to meet him. And I'm saying to myself,
Excuse me?
don't want to meet your husband. I'm sleeping with you. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's,
Yeah.
You know, even at that age, I wasn't even 18 yet. I was getting close to 18. I remember I wasn't 18 because when she asked me how old I was, I lied and said I was 18. I was smart.
Right.
And I didn't want her to think she was, you know, doing something wrong. And she lied. She was 31 and told me she was 28. So that's why I remember the age real good. And
10 years, isn't it?
Perfect,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's perfect.
So she starts telling me she would like me to meet him. He could do a lot for you. And I have no intention of meeting him, okay?
Understandable.
And at that time, I'm getting ready to go into college, which I did. I made it through high school. I'm into college my first year. And she knows that. I'm going to college. I said, I'm going for police science, fire science, political science. I also took English, and writing, and psychology. Those are like the 6 classes I took. And they helped me in my future, too. Every one of those classes.
The criminal justice.
Going through the life I went through, even psychology and writing, of course, helped me.
Sure.
So I take the fire department exam to become a fireman like my father. And I get a 99 on the written. I get a 95 on the physical. I'm definitely going to be called for this,
Sure.
for the job, okay? And I'm only, you know, I'm young. I don't think I can be called on until I'm 21, or was it 18 at the time? I forget.
20 probably.
Maybe 20, maybe, because I was
Civil
close.
servant for the civil servant.
Right.
job.
Once I passed that test, my father says, within a year, you're going to be called. You know, maybe to go into the boot camp or whatever it was, you know. He even told me you could go to Delahanty. Remember Delahanty's a
Yes,
school?
this-
He said you could get a head start on your lieutenant test, and,
Right,
you know,
right.
he says, you'll be a chief someday. Anyway, so I talk about it, make it a little upset in my mind.
Yeah. Because if it was.
He's looking down at me.
Trajectory. Yeah. They've just things.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I get through the test, and now I'm still working at Dan's. I'm still going to karate. I'm still playing ball. I'm doing everything an 18-year-old does. But along the way, she tells me that her husband is opening up a new business, a supply company, and they're going to need a sales manager
Right.
for the whole East Coast. So I said, all right, but you know, I'm on the list. I says, I could even, you know, I could possibly get on the police department first and then switch over. And she goes, oh, no, you can't be a cop. She was adamant about that. Don't even ever bring that up again. That's a bad,
That
you
might
don't
have
want to
been
be
a-
I know, but
might have
again,
been a sign.
I said, well,
You know,
why would
in
she, you
hindsight.
know, no, nobody likes cops. She's not, just made it like, so I said, all right, I'm on the fire department list anyway. So this is now the reason I meet him. They bring me to a restaurant one night. Well, let me go back a step. After a while of convincing me, he'll do anything I ask. He loves me. He'll don't worry about it. You know. Finally, I say, all right, I'll meet him. So I go to her house, and I'll never forget. She told me he's always home at 5 o'clock. He's very, very regimented. I learned that along the way too. So I get there about 4:30. And the funny thing is, when I first met her, again, I was a little under 18. I never even saw a joint. Never saw what it looked like.
You were definitely the Cleaver family.
I didn't.
Yeah, you
I
did-
didn't drink. I didn't drink. So when I first met her that night, and it's like a historical newspaper article where she had a glass of wine waiting for me, and M&Ms. I should get endorsements for M&Ms for that because it comes up all the time.
Right.
They say, you had wine and M&Ms.
Classic pairing.
And there was a joint in the ashtray. And I'll never forget telling her, I said, I'll sip a little wine, but I said, the wine's fine. That's all I want, you know. So she said, okay, no big deal. And I think she already smoked a little because you could just see she was real casual and loose. And so
She
that was-
probably had a little nerves.
that was a fantastic night,
Right.
the first night together, I will say that. Then, so I get there at 4:30, and she has a wine for me. I says, you know what? I'm going to try that vodka. Because knowing I'm meeting him, so I sip a little
a
vodka.
little stronger than
And I'm
wine.
waiting at the front door. And I'm looking out the window and I see cars go by. Volkswagen goes by. Of course, it couldn't be him. Another car goes by. Finally, the big black Fleetwood Brougham Caddy pulls up, tinted windows, spoke hubcaps, pulls in the driveway.
And do you have any idea at
I
this
still don't
point?
know what
Nope.
he is, who he is. Just Charles. I'm meeting
Just
Charles
Charles.
tonight. She still didn't tell me. So he gets out of the car. Now, in the wintertime in New York, you know, it gets a little darker. He has dark sunglasses on, and it's already pretty dark out, okay? He's dressed like you see in movies like John Gotti and guys like that. He has a sport jacket on, jewelry, a chain. I could see the watch and the diamond. I could see it as he's walking. But I always said he didn't walk, he swaggered. He had a very, very unique way to walk. And he walked over to the door real slow. And when he got to the door, I opened the door, I put my hand out, and says, hi, I'm Larry. He says in his deep voice, I'm Greg. Now I'm
Not,
thinking to myself,
not Charles.
right. I says, what? I said, but I just said, okay. So he comes in, he goes, he's gonna go change, because we're gonna go out to eat. He wants to go, whatever, fix his hair and stuff, very vain man. Well, I shouldn't say that, I do my hair like worse than a girl to this day, so. But anyway, he took his time and he went inside. Linda comes down. I say, Linda, I thought his name was Charles. He told me he's Greg. She says, oh, he just uses that name. And
She's not giving it up, is she?
no, she don't care. She's the most carefree, convincing person. She got the world by the you know what. And I just remember saying to myself, people just use other names. I never heard of that, you know. So now he comes walking back down. He's got 2 scotches, one for me. I never even smelled scotch. I mean, that's like, I drank, I don't want to say like I was a virgin.
No,
you know.
no.
But I would have vodka and orange juice. What do kids have? Seagram 7 and 7. You know.
Yeah.
I never had scotch on the rocks. So now I got to take a sip with him. And I'm already seeing this is not a salesman, you know. Because now I'm seeing a little bit of my Uncle Albert, that man's man way about him, because my Uncle Albert was a dinosaur in the Colombo family.
Okay.
So I take a sip of the scotch. I do my best not to choke on it or, you know,
Gotta
cry.
try to look-
But I said, oh, this is good. Great, thank you, you know. But anyway, we get in the car. As we're walking to the car, Linda grabs me by the arm and she wants to walk arm in arm with me. I'm pulling away from her. It's comical, but he was a little bit in front. We're walking behind him. We get in the car. She wants me to sit in the front with them. I says, no, it's all right. Let me sit in the back. And she's shaking her head like I'm a big baby. So, in hindsight, okay, 3 months went by. Did she already tell him? Okay, I don't know. She told me she didn't. She's told me he doesn't know. As a matter of fact, she's told me that he knows a lot of people. So we have to be very quiet about this, you know.
Okay.
Then again, okay, so now I could see that he's a little different. We drive to the restaurant, and we're going to meet his other 2 partners in the supply company. We walk in the door at Sorrento's. There's a restaurant on 5th Avenue. Do you remember it?
Yes.
Okay, great place, great place. The owner's name was Ralph. He's also the chef. He hears Greg is coming, comes out of the back to see Greg. The son is the bartender. He comes out from behind the bar, and he's getting more kisses than the Pope. I mean, it's amazing.
It's pretty hard to ignore all these things you don't
I'm
want to
so-
know
yeah.
anymore.
No. Now I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it, and I'm understanding that this is somebody. The waiters come over. He's got his own table in the back with the wine, you know, one white, one red. And then we sit there for a while. Then the 2 guys come in. Soon as they sit down, he doesn't. Now they're partners. He doesn't say, "This is Larry. This is somebody I'd like to present to possibly be our sales manager," like any partner would do. They sit down, and he says, Stanley Meyer, who's an ex-attorney. Remember him, the attorney, Stanley Meyer?
Absolutely.
And the other one's name was, oh God, he was the guy that had the company in Long Island. Hewlett Supply Company was the name of the company. I forget his name, believe it or not. Anyway, we introduces both, and he says, say hello to Larry, your new sales manager. Just like that, I was made the sales manager.
I mean, and you're still 18 or
18.
19.
Well, not,
You're- I
right,
mean,
not,
you're-
not 19, but over 18. I'm probably over 18 by this point. So they start explaining to me what the job's going to be. And it starts out going into stores, servicing fire extinguishers. Okay, so I got to say, okay, you're almost due for an inspection. We can do it for you. And my little catchphrase was before the fire department comes in. Semi-illegal because I'm giving them fear. You know, but see, you could say it nicely. We'll do it for you before the firemen come in. And it was only like $10 at the time. And I would do it, I'd refill it for them, but it opened the door to selling them supplies to their business. But little did I know, the list of stores I went to at first were all Greg's friends. So he
Sure.
gave me a list of 12 stores the first day. I thought I was the best salesman on earth. I walked in and it said, oh yeah, please, Larry, come on in. But yeah, give me 4 of those, 4, yo, this is great. And I started making money. Now he says, okay, there's some stores around the stores we send you to, go into them too. So I go in, and most of them wouldn't buy or take it. So I would go back and tell him, yeah, that Sammy's discount still, he wouldn't take it. Carmine, pulls Carmine in, go see Sammy's discount. The next day I go back to Sammy's, and I'm a great salesman again. So he's buying everything from me. Now we branch off at 13th Avenue, we go to 18th Avenue. But first, we have to go see Sammy the Bull. So, don't know who Sammy the Bull is at this time, but he's running things around there. And he opens the door literally to some of the stores for me. And we go to Avenue U, and we see Nikki Black. And this goes on and on. So I'm building up a business, and I'm making money. And so my mother and father at this point are proud of me. They figure, okay, great. Because what happened, the fire department test that I was waiting for had a problem in the courts.
Okay.
Minorities and women, no offense to anybody, put a lawsuit in saying it was too difficult.
Affirmative action.
Well,
kind of
affirmative, and the
playing
women, I mean, it was difficult for a man to pass the physical. You know, you're dragging
Sure.
a 120-pound dummy 100 yards, then run up a ladder with all those things on and get underneath. I mean, probably only 2 girls were there out of the hundreds that took the test. So the judge that has to decide on it takes 2 years to decide. So now I'm firmly entrenched in this business. And when he decides that they're right and they win their lawsuit, he puts the test for another 2 years. So now I just from 18 to 24. But in that time, I'm making money with this business.
Oh, sure.
And I bring my father to meet Greg. You know, and he explained he's in on the ground floor. He's telling my father this. He's doing great with the sales.
Did your father have any idea who
He knew now. He found out, yeah. At first he didn't, because I never said anything. But then he went to Uncle Albert. And Uncle Albert, when he said, who's this guy, Greg? Greg went, oh. My Uncle Albert went, oh. He said, he's a heavyweight. But my father was like, he was very naive to that life. But in some ways, because of Uncle Albert, I don't want to say enamored or in awe, but it was something there that a lot of people have. That's why we're out here telling these stories. People just like it. And he liked it in a way. You know, he liked when he had a problem, Uncle Albert solved it, you know? But I got to tell this funny story. This is how naive he was opposed to my mom, who was the brother of Albie, the sister of Albie.
Right, right.
They have a hot refrigerator. Now, back in the 60s, I mean, refrigerators were probably, I don't think everybody had them, you know, so it was a novelty.
Right.
It's what they had when that he could get real cheap. So he tells my father, don't worry, it fell off a truck. My father tells him, I don't want no damaged refrigerator. My mother told him, shut up, we'll take it, you know. So he was, I hate to say it, but easily misled at that point. Because again, he said it himself. He said the kid was driving a caddy, company car, but it wasn't, it was my car. He never asked us for a penny. He was paid his rent. There was no problems. I'd never seen him come home drunk or on drugs or anything like that. So I said, where was, you know, so there was nothing wrong at that point. But here's where everything goes haywire. The factory or warehouse where all this stuff is being stored goes up in flames after a few years.
Interesting.
And to this day, I don't know if it was an insurance job, because I do know Greg hated legitimate businesses. They might have been having problems. They might have been having financial arguments, and he could have just said, torch the place, get me my money back, whatever. I don't know. So now that happens, and now the fire department's a thing of the past. I have no job. I left the school for the job.
Sure.
I left John Jay. So Linda tells Greg he's got to do something for me. He's got to do something for me. So his first thing is to bring me into the numbers business. Now, I don't really know what it is. I mean, I have an idea, but I didn't bet them at that time. I didn't really do anything with numbers. I'm probably really, because it really, the business was only open 2 years. It didn't go the whole 4 years at the fire department, so I still had a chance. I still had a chance. I've always kicked myself in the behind for that. But now I started doing the numbers. And the numbers, for people that don't know, is just like what you go bet in 7-Eleven and pick out 3 numbers or the lottery. But
But at the time, it was illegal.
Right, and it was a street business. But it was, I don't think anybody ever got arrested for numbers that I ever heard of in my life. Nobody gets beat up for it because there's no credit.
So
It's
it's
just,
a slippery slope.
it's
not,
a clean,
it's
it's a clean,
victimless.
Right.
Either winner, you know.
Yeah.
right. So anyway, I start making now a couple of $100 a day, just helping him pick up the numbers in different places. But I got good at it, and I started seeing how I could make it even bigger. So about that time, there was something called OTB, off-track betting, in New York. And I figured that's a captive audience. You know, if I go in there, so I started going to all the OTBs in the area, picking up numbers. Then I noticed that they're all betting with OTB on the horses, and they're losing 7% per winning ticket. Every time you win, OTB takes out 7%. So I says, why don't you bet them with me? And I spoke to Greg Jr. about this, and he says, yeah, take that. Nobody beats the horses. And they did. Now we have this additional income coming in. Now I'm making, I'm just going to throw a number out, I don't know, $400 or $500 a day, which at that time, that age, tax-free. So now, of course, I don't stop there. I tell them, how about sports? Let's take their action on sports too. Next thing you know, I got different people in different OTBs. I got to have a phone. Then I need a second phone. Then I need a third phone. Then I find out the laws that you can't have more than 4 phones. It becomes federal. So I have to have 2 different places. Now I need somebody I trust, so who do I recruit? My best friend, Jimmy. Come on in, you can run this end of it. Look what I'm making. And he's like me. And he fell into it too. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's how it happens. But along the way, she starts telling me now I have to, we got to be real careful. But she starts saying she wants to tell him about us. Now I know who he is.
And you know who he is.
Now I know who he is, yes.
Do you think he already knew, though?
At that point, I didn't. That's why I says, we'll jump around back and forth here.
Just
But
the insanity of that first meeting, having a glass of scotch, you're going out to a restaurant, and she's holding your arm
Yeah,
going
yeah.
out. It's like,
yeah,
and
no.
you not knowing that he's...
Well, Greg along the way now is confiding in me as a friend also. Okay, he's telling me things that he only tells friends. So I find out he has another wife in New Jersey. I find out he has a beauty queen of a wife named Lily who lives in Manhattan and Vegas. That's why he's always all over the board, you know, and it opened up the door.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Later on, way later on, I find out there was a possible 4th right there on 13th Avenue where he had kids with, or a kid with, okay?
And then there's Connie.
Connie was his first wife, right. A childhood sweetheart that they got married and had the kids. So there's a lot to be talked about with that. So now he's confiding in me, and I'm feeling guilty, and she sees it. So I start sort of staying away. I'm trying to almost end our relationship. Not that I want to, not that I don't start feelings, but now I'm worried about my life.
Your life.
I says,
Sure.
I know now, if he finds out, he's got to kill me, you know.
Those are the rules.
So, right, exactly. So more months go by, and he sees now that I'm not the same person. I'm paranoid. He didn't say that, but I know I was. He would call me to go somewhere with him, and I wouldn't show up, which is bad. That's bad. And Linda would get me the next morning on the phone and say, what happened? He was waiting for you. And I would say on the phone, I think he was going to kill me. She said, he would never do that to you. What's the matter with you? He loves you. Hangs up the phone. Now, come on over here. I go over, and he's there, and he's feels sad. He said, why didn't you show up? I said, I had a flat tire. I'm still like playing stupid. So again, cut to the chase. One day, and this is what I don't know if if she just told him or whatever, but we're driving to the club. I would pick him up or meet him at his house every day at about 12 o'clock. By 12:30, we would be at the club. The rest of the men would come at 1. We always got there first. So when I get to the house, and Linda leaves, she goes in her car now, and he starts talking to me a little bit. As we're walking to the car, we get in the car. He says, I'm going to have a conversation with you now that you got to believe me from my heart, and I believe you're mature enough to accept this. So I know where he's going.
I was going to
and
say,
my
what
heart,
are you
my heart is
thinking?
like this. My heart's pounding. I'm looking out the window. I'm looking for an escape. So but he prolongs it. And we're not that far from the club. It takes less than 10 minutes to get there if you make the lights or whatever. And there wasn't traffic in Brooklyn back then like it is today. So we get there in, say, 10 minutes. We get out of the car, as usual. We go into the back into his office. He gets behind his desk in his big throne. And I sit, chair just like this. And he continues. He says, what I'm about to tell you, he says, I want, again, you got to believe me from my heart. He says, but I know about you and Linda. So up to that moment, I always said to myself, I would never admit it. Because once you admit it, you're dead in my eyes. He's going to kill me.
Sure.
So
Those
I'm
are the
never
rules.
going to admit it. And I always thought about the scene in The Godfather where Michael Corleone convinces the guy, he says, don't insult my intelligence. If you admit it to me, I'll chase you. I never want to see you again. But something came over me, whether it was God or something inside me that I didn't know I had, or I just didn't want to lose her. I don't know what it is, but I looked at him and I says, Greg, I have a lot of respect for you, and I think you're far from an idiot, but only an idiot wouldn't see what was going on. He started laughing. He hit the desk. He makes me walk outside. So as we walk outside, he puts his arm around me. I'm still a little...
So he's actually making you sweat.
No, I don't
No?
know. I don't think he was trying to do that, to be honest with you. That was we would always walk outside. It was sunny out, and we wound up leaning on one of the meters like we always did, right by the meter. He'd lean on it, or I would, soaking up the sun. And he told me, he said he's okay with it as long as only the 3 of us know. And this is when I knew it was a real rule. He says, if anybody outside the 3 of us ever hears about this, he says, you and I will be killed. So now I'm 19 and a half, and I'm realizing I could be killed. I could be murdered. So,
Right.
Did you tell any of your friends this? Like
Jimmy knew. Jimmy knew because he saw the affair starting to happen when we worked together at Dan's supermarket. My cousin Joey, my Uncle Albert's son, caught the drift real soon, but they knew they had to keep it quiet.
Were you guys like in love, or?
Well, listen, it lasted almost 10 years. So speaking for myself, yes, and I know she was too. I mean, there's no doubt. She was very...
Was there any talk about like ever doing something beyond that situation?
Well, yes, not anything. She wanted to run away with me. She asked if I would run away with her. I remember her telling me she's got $1 million in a safety deposit box plus a bunch of jewelry. We could go. I said, where are we going to go? She's not going to let us get away. I said, we can't do that. And she would say, no, we could do it. We could go to Hawaii. And I would say no.
So she wasn't happy.
And she would say something to me like, oh, you don't love me. I said, oh, is that what this is all about? I mean, I said, you know I do, but, it was crazy. It was like, it was always childish, but she was very possessive.
So she
Very
wasn't
possessive.
okay with the arrangement of Ice Day. I mean, she kind of really wanted you
you
all
know,
to herself, and
Yeah, she wouldn't let me go with another girl. I couldn't, God forbid I was seen with another girl, or girl came to the club to visit me. No, that was, and then after it was out, we would, the 3 of us were like 3 peas in a pod, we'd kid around. He would make a joke to her. He said, you got to see the girl that came to see Larry today. I says, why would you do that to me? So we had this camaraderie that was just, but.
a very unique
so now-
situation.
But now I'm going to go back and say what I think, where I was going to lead to before. I think he knew earlier on. I know not at the beginning, not when it happened. There's no way a man in his position say, yeah, go ahead, go for it, you know. But he did have his own life. He had 3 women he was juggling. This was the youngest. This was his trophy. Was it better to know where she was when he's out, not to be seen in a nightclub somewhere, or, you know, where he causing trouble? And he got to like me. He really genuinely liked me. I mean, he used to say he loved me like a son, but I learned he didn't love anybody. You know, that's for later on. But he did tell me that he loved me like a son. And I think I made his life easier.
Sure.
I think I was an addition that he needed that made his life easier. So when he's spending weekends with Connie, he's fine. When he's spending 2 nights a week in Manhattan or Vegas, I used to take him to the airport with Linda. Right. And it's funny because we'd be waving goodbye to him. The minute he was out of sight, she'd slide over to be next to me and hugging me and kissing me driving. I mean, so it was, you know.
Did Linda know about Lily and all the other?
She knew about Connie. She did not know about Lily. And like I said, the last one that came out with the girl on 13th Day, I'm sure she didn't know that. The only one she knew about was Connie.
And Lily's story is somewhat interesting in that, was it, I guess, her partner or the doctor?
Well, that's, you know, it's harder for me to talk about that because
it's Greg.
It's somebody else's. Yeah, no, I know a lot about it, and I'll say what I know, but there could be, I might not have everything exactly factual, where my wife does, because she researched this inside out. You should have her on if you want to hear about Lily. Yeah. It's a crazy story, but in a nutshell, this Lily was married to a doctor, and they were doing abortions. Right. That was and they were making a fortune doing it.
Okay.
And Greg and Lily had an affair. And with him out of the way, it would be their business and whatever from there. So it was over greed. It's like the shows you see on TV, American Greed, or, you know, shows that you've probably been on.
So the doctor's got to go.
Yeah, and I don't want to, I'm not sure, you know, he went. He went. And it might have been somebody very close to us that did it, that I don't.
I had always heard that it was Greg Jr.
Again, I can't say that because I've never said it or testified to it. I have no factual knowledge that that's the case. But yeah, rumors are rumors. It could have been him. It could have been Joe Brewster. It could have been Carmine Sessa, Bobby Zam. These guys were around Greg a long time. And like myself, he educated them and groomed them to be a mini him. So, you know, but yeah, that was definitely a hit.
And so now he marries her, and then she's got a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
You would think that a guy, you know, you might want to, I know you can't step away from the mom, but you'd think he could have come up with some other kind of scam, anything to just be.
He was never, ever going to leave that life.
He was just so into that.
He made money in every possible area. That was just another avenue, you know, and nah, it's just, he was one of the attorneys, Joe Benefanti, who I'm close with him and I like him a lot. I have a lot of respect because he tried to help me. Said that he's a swashbuckler, he's a Viking, he's every pirate,
A swordsman.
whatever there was, he would have been that person in that time frame, and he would have been the worst of all of them, you know. So, very, very eager to. It was all about him, his whole world.
Did Linda ever talk about? I guess not. Going down south with Greg.
No,
I would assume she could.
No, that is a story that again.
Right.
We'll have my wife on. She researched that whole thing too, and I learned about it through different sources, including sources. That's a cop word. I'm sorry,
we were
using
talking
your
about
word.
that.
I've learned from different.
Fled to parts unknown.
No.
In a vehicle.
An FBI agent told me more than he should have probably
Okay.
about that case, going as far as to say that he did unspeakable things to them to find the body. And I've used that term because that's exactly what
So
he
in
said
a
to me.
nutshell, it was, he went down south.
He went down
for-
south. The FBI needed help in finding the bodies of the civil rights workers that were killed by the Ku Klux Klan. This is who, and they couldn't find it. Nobody was breaking. They needed somebody. So they recruited him to do it. If you see the movie, they sort of make you think it's the FBI, but they pull the masks on, so you never know who it is. But I thought the FBI did this in the movie. But later on, I found out it was Greg who went down there and did everything, every means possible. And one of the things that is, I think, is misconstrued, it took him more than one person to get to the guy that knew. Everybody hears about the guy that owned this store and they threw him in the trunk.
You start at the bottom and work your way up.
But there was people before that he had to do the unspeakable things. And eventually it led to this grand poobah, whatever they call him, the grand wizard.
To get
Right,
the actual.
to find out where these bodies were.
And they didn't give it up immediately. There was.
They didn't. The first few didn't, but then eventually one did, and they got to this guy, and when he threw him in the car and whatever. Again, I wasn't there. I just know what I heard, little bits and pieces. And there's a whole article about it in the Times. So it's not that it's not true. Well, not that the newspaper is truthful about everything, but that happens to be true. I mean, you know, nobody denied it. The FBI doesn't even
So
deny it.
he's-
So.
What was the day in the life, like, you pick up Greg, what is the club like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Is everyone reading the paper?
No,
talking?
well, no. It's
you're
believe it or
talking
not,
business?
there's guys that will just stand at the window and look out the window, watching girls go by, watching the avenue go by. But all day long, there's people coming in handing them money, Shylock customers. Greg's main business and something I got into, although the bookmaking was what really made me, was the shy business, where you lend out money at high rates. And he was a Shylock to Shylocks. So he would give you 10,000 at 100 a week. You would charge the person 300 a week. So this went on with like probably 15, 20 different men under him. So it was amazing how much cash would come in on a daily basis. Other guys would be sitting down playing cards. I was one of them. I like to play gin. I would play gin one-on-one. We'd always have a little lunch together, whether it went next door or had something come in. Guys would sit around. People would be coming in, bringing the numbers. Now he's a big shot. I didn't have to go out and get them anymore. They would bring them to me.
Coming to you.
And then we'd go in the back, Greg and I, and Greg Jr., of course, and we'd sort it all out. It wasn't, we were working, but we weren't digging graves or anything. We just, it was a long day.
You're still very young at this point.
Yeah,
right?
probably, 21
And
now.
was Greg Jr. around a
Yeah,
lot, or
Greg
did you
Jr.
see
came
him?
every day, at the beginning especially. And I remember I was in a little awe of Gregory Jr. because he got a lot of respect because it was Greg's son.
Sure.
I later learned that he earned all that respect without a doubt, and eventually became the first good fella under Greg. So when he got straightened out, it was a big deal. And he was only about 25, I guess, when he got straightened out. Maybe 27, something like that, because I was 21. I don't remember the exact, but I do remember that.
Being straightened out.
That means you go from, we never called it an associate. You go from being just a knockaround guy that's hanging around with the wise guys to becoming a good fellow or a wise guy. And they say you got straightened out
Okay.
when you take that next step. So it was, but there was planning, always planning another way to make money. And Greg had, in a nutshell, and if anybody ever reads my book, I get into detail. We had fake tokens for the bridges, and you should remember that
For
because
the bridges, for
and,
the tolls?
well, here's what happened: the Verrazano Bridge went from 75 cents to $1.50. Now it's $20. But the people were up in arms. Nobody wanted to pay this $1.50. So we had a guy who figured out how to turn a penny.
The weight?
You needed the copper.
Oh, okay.
That was, I guess, the secret thing in there. 1 penny, and we made an exact duplicate. So we sold so many of these. I hate to hurt your feelings now. Judges, lawyers, cops were buying these tokens, not just street people.
Cops have to commute too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember watching the news, and they tried putting a cop at every booth. Didn't work.
No.
Then they tried other things. It got to the point where either the mayor or the chief, somebody came on TV and says, we're getting more fake tokens than real
Than
ones.
real tokens.
So they had to undergo they changed the whole machines. They changed everything. They put chips in them. We cost the state a fortune probably having to do that.
Not just on
So-
the take, but actually
Yeah.
on also having to redesign the whole program.
Yes. So now people were bringing bags back of tokens because they were no good anymore. And a guy comes to me and wants his money back. He goes, go see Greg. They come back with his, I don't want my money anymore.
Never
He was-
mind.
So that, and the other thing, then we started with the fake credit cards came in, and same thing, they made a duplicate It wasn't hot. You didn't even know your card was being used because it's in your purse. But we had a duplicate from the blueprint, the
Oh,
old
this is
carbon
when,
copy.
this is when you used to use the
old days,
machines,
yeah.
the
Yes,
cha-ching
yes. And then
machines,
we
yeah.
knew if you spent under $75, they didn't even call up the company. So I remember walking from store to store to store. I bought a shirt, I bought a pair of shoes, everything under $75. And, you know, so, but that's where I got my nickname, Legitimate Larry, because I wouldn't use them unless the person knew that I was going in with.
Okay.
Like, I would go to a restaurant and we'd order lobster and steak and the best wine, and you knew the tab's gonna be $1,200. They knew, they didn't care. So I know I'm walking out of there. I'm not gonna jeopardize. And I remember telling Big Greg once, I says, why would you use a fake credit card for a $100 lunch? He tells me the food tastes better when it's free. This was his mentality. And he's making, at that time,
got how much
$25,000 a week Shylock business alone, and he won't pay $100 for lunch. So,
So when you guys are in the club hanging out too, you get word from time to time, like where you might need to help somebody out in the community, let's say, somebody who's connected. Like what kind of things would happen where?
well, you know, there was times where like, you know, there was a bar down the street for one that, you know, if this is what you look, I'm not sure 100% where you're going, but like where one of the daughters was being picked on by the guys at this bar. So they were told to lay off and leave her alone, be respectful, whatever. When they continued to act that way, now Greg sent us in a different
Right.
capacity. This go put him in the hospital. So we would go and hurt the guy, and nobody cared. They knew what we were doing. And the kid never bothered her again. You know, that's one example. There was guys, and this is where the total hypocrisy comes. There were guys selling drugs on the avenue, whether it was near a school or a church or whatever. There was a reason that we got involved. If they didn't listen to us, we hurt them, and then they left. So the people in the neighborhood didn't hate us. We didn't do anything. We didn't shake down stores or anything like that, like you see in the movies. You know, we kept a real clean neighborhood.
You kind of ran everybody off that would, you know,
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want heat in the neighborhood.
We don't want heat, and we got
No.
along with the local cops. I mean, to this day, I mean, the feds were different. They're having a different agenda, and they'll cheat worse than us to get what they want. Where I've always said it, you know, I'm not saying it because you're an ex-detective. I thought this big city cops earned their reputations. They went out and they pieced things together. The FBI, unless somebody tells them what happened, they don't know. And I had FBI agents tell me, because I did a talk show of my own. We can talk about that later. And I had an FBI agent on, and he says, we're not that smart. You know, he was just really, it was fun. It was funny. So,
And so with the numbers business, there's occasionally problems with collections. You got to go
not so much with that, but when I branched out into sports
sports
and
or-
horses and things that way, you're giving them credit, where they can call up and say, hey, give me 500 on the Yankees. And then they don't have the 500.
and they need loans.
Right. So that's how I got into the Shylock business, basically. Somebody owed money they couldn't pay. I says, go get it from Greg. He would get it, and he would charge, say, 3 points, but he'd give me 2. He says, I get 1 point. That's so the guy's dropping off 150 a week. He's taking 50, I'm getting 100. So that business grew. And there's no room for mercy with the Shylock business, especially with Greg as the bank. If they miss a week or 2 weeks, whereas with the sports, if a guy lost money to me and he was a legitimate square that just lost week after week after week, and this one day he couldn't come up with it, I didn't hurt him.
right.
I said, I'm going to shut you out. Don't let me hear you betting somewhere else. Get even with me. We'll figure it out. And I have guys to this day that say, you were the fairest guy I ever met. I loved you. I wish you'd come back. You know, I'm telling you. But on the other hand, there's a guy that beats you for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, 5,000, 8,000. Then he loses 6,000, and you don't have a penny. And he wants to come in and mention somebody's name. That I had no problem giving him a shot right there.
Right.
Boom, you know, not a bullet shot. And if, you know, that because now it's like you're just abusing me, you know?
Exactly.
So, and the first one that happened was similar to that, but I never saw a vicious beating in my life like this. The guy owed money, and I had most of it coming to me. Like 11 of the 13,000 was mine. I think the other 3 or whatever it was Greg and Greg Jr., the way it worked out. Probably because I had laid out money to pay people, whatever. So this guy comes in, and the week before, another wise guy comes in named Sonny. And he's talking for the guy, and he says, I want to help out and pay. So Greg says, you want to pay the money? The guy says, no, but I want to help. He says, then mind your business. We'll collect the money ourselves. So he leaves. The next week, the kid comes. I got to bring him there. He gets a beating that was just, I don't know how he's still alive. He looked like a watermelon. I mean, it was, the first time I seen it.
Yeah,
I saw kickboxing fights where a guy got a black eye or, whatever. But this was like just a pummeling.
Do you think it was because he brought someone to try to ease
Well, he still didn't have the money, but partially.
The
Because listen to
disrespect
what
and-
Greg made me do. We had to throw him in my car and drop him off in front of Sonny's house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So needless to say,
there's
a week
lesson.
later, the money was paid. Right. So little by little, you learn. So after that one, I understood that the guy they made it clear, he tried to rob us. We can't allow that, And again, I'm getting a little older. I'm 22, whatever, 21, 22. I don't even know. But it's early on in my 20s, and I'm starting to see more and more of that. Now he tells me, take a ride with Gregory and Billy. I go, or Gregory and Jerry, whatever. And Gregory says, I mean, you're just going to stand at the door. We stand at the door. I see Billy go in and start knocking this guy all over the building. I come out, I go away. So now he's acclimating me to this,
It's a little bit
little
more,
baby
a
steps,
little bit more,
right?
a little bit
Little
more.
baby steps, until eventually, you're part of all the beatings. And the thing they do too, very important, is they make it personal at first. It's easy, like the girl in the neighborhood that was being bothered by this bully.
It's easy to rationalize. Yeah,
Exactly,
you're
because if it's
the
your
hero.
own sister, or
Sure.
you're going to do the same thing. So, but then eventually it spreads out to business. The guy didn't come when he was called. The guy is selling drugs, or the guy.
He's stealing from you, essentially.
Yeah,
so,
he's doing
you
something
rationalize
wrong, and now
these,
you're killing him. Well, you have to be part of this. So that's why I draw a line in my own head from the pre-war, which we'll get to eventually, things that I was involved with, to after the war.
Okay.
Once the war started, it's easier for me to talk about the violence and stuff like that. But early on, I'm in the club one day. Guy comes in. Now, again, I've seen beatings. I took him places where, let's say, I heard the gunshot, and he came out. And then I drove Gregory somewhere with somebody else, and I knew they were going to shoot a guy and jump in the car with Carmine, and I was the crash car. That's a big job. Right. And the reason I was good at that, and I was asked to do that a lot, was because a lot of guys don't have legitimate licenses. So I did. I always had a good license to be a crash car. So what happens is, if the guy gets shot in the street and the guys jump in, they start running away. If I see Bill coming around, Bill, or any cop, coming around the corner to chase that car, I got to ran into the cop car.
Got it.
And so
You
I
gotta
panicked.
take-
I
yeah.
got nervous.
Right.
So I would have been good at that if that had happened. So you do all these
You wouldn't
things.
do it to a fire truck,
No, it's
Well,
bigger
they
than me.
seems to me like they use you in very small, different
Right.
roles.
Yes. Yeah, and then the
Little
time Greg's daughter almost got raped. That's one that I was right on the scene with. But again, it was
Sure.
his daughter. We beat the hell out of the guy. And I told Greg, that's enough. We did enough. I said, he'll learn his lesson. Let him go tell other people,
Right.
He couldn't live with it. Took another 3 months, and we shot the guy. We killed him. So things like that. And
It was a time he
Yeah,
asked you
was
to
that-
flatten the tire on the car.
real early on, I had to give a guy a flat. The next day, in the newspaper, a man killed fixing flat. And I knew it was the car that I gave the flat to, but I think it was a test. Because when I came in the club, all the newspapers were out. And everybody, guys were reading it, walking away, laughing, smiling. And I didn't say anything about it. I said absolutely nothing. I didn't go in the back and say, Greg, I gave the guy a flat. He's dead today. Somebody shot him. Just minded my business like I was told to do my whole life.
Right.
So yeah, it's gradual steps. And then, eventually you're going to see him shoot somebody. And,
Was your first time involved in, like, up front and close and personal, was that within the wars, or was there stuff that predated?
no, there's things that predated, like Linda's hit and the time I saw him shoot a guy right in the club, Greg.
Oh yeah, what was that?
Okay, there's two guys that happened similar. And I remember talking to Gregory about it, not too long ago, and he remembers these situations. But the one I remember was the guy Donnie, and there's two of them that it happened to. I may have the name backwards or whatever. But I remember Donnie because he was a number runner, and he would come in every day, and he liked to drink, and he would drop the numbers off, drop the money he had to, and he'd sit and chat for a few minutes and leave. This day he came in, and I'm sitting in a chair like this across the desk. When he came in, I got up because the guy would sit there to take care of his business. There's a couch in the back that Gregory was already on, so I went and sat with Gregory, and Carmine Sessa is standing at the door. We were hanging around.
Just
He comes
every
in,
other day.
Just like every other day. Guy comes in, sits down, and after Greg counts the money, like what is he gonna do? After he counts the money, checks the number, puts them in the drawer, and he says, "So, Donnie, what is this I hear on my rat?" You could see the air come out of this guy, Donnie.
Because he knows.
He must have said something to somebody. And he starts trying, Greg, come on, you know better than that. I was drinking, we were kidding around, I might have used a bad word. He says, "You got any proof of that?" You know, because if you have paperwork on somebody and you want to present it, that's okay. I mean, you're doing the right thing. But once the guy says no, you got the right to kill him in our life. A lot of guys wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't know that I would. I'd probably give him a beat and say, don't ever talk like that again. Right. You know,
Right.
Keep your mouth shut. Or next time we're going to kill you. But Greg reached in, boom, shot him. The first time I seen a guy get killed, right. You know, and he went flying back. I remember Carmine running out of the room because he got hit with something like blood or brains or whatever. Even Gregory was shocked. And I was like beyond shocked and mortified. I just didn't know.
Heads up next time.
Yeah, really.
So Carmine.
So now the reason I remember this so well, and I got to think Gregory has something a little off when we talked about it, is now we had to roll him up in the carpet. And that's in my song that you heard.
Right.
That's where men get rolled up in Persian rugs. We rolled him up. And I had to go with Bobby's in. Well, we dumped it. We just carried it out, put it in the trunk. They drove him away.
Broad daylight. Just
Broad
carry out a
daylight,
rug.
right in the middle of the afternoon. The end of the year, 3:30. It's probably school buses going by. So Greg tells me, go with Bobby and get a new rug. So we go to next block, there's a rug carpet place in Linoleum and all. So Bobby picks out this color rug, orange. And I'm not gonna say anything. Bobby's older than me, he's been around much longer, and I love him, he was a great guy. We bring the rug back and we put it down. When the guys get back, they're looking at it. They're saying, "Why'd you get this color?" They're blaming me. "Lad, why'd you let him do this?" I said, "What are you talking about? He picked out the color." Bobby's colorblind.
Oh.
And that's the memorable point of all that. There's a guy that was just dropped off in a dumpster, and everybody's talking about the rug. Look, we got an orange rug now in here. I mean, this is how.
This is the disconnect.
Yes,
is
exactly. Yeah, the big problem was the rug. But we kept that rug for years because Greg wasn't going to go for another $300.
And was there another situation where a guy got killed that was similar? That
Yeah, and I think that had something to do with a score that was going to happen, and they were complaining that too many of our guys were on it. But again, I think that might have predated me, and it might have been close, but it doesn't. I know what I remember happening, and it happened.
Yeah, because I know Mikey Scar's brother got killed.
Mikey Scott was
talking about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
their
It's probably in that same circle, but that's one that I was supposed to drive Greg to, and that's one of the ones I didn't go to. And Linda was on the phone all night calling. Remember the old days when you listened to the answering machine?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the thing was beeping and beeping and beeping. It's her. "Where were you? Call me." All night long. And I said, "I can't call. What am I going to say? I didn't show up." I didn't know what happened at that one. So the next morning I called. I had to go to have coffee, and I felt like I was sitting with my priest confessing and lying about the tire. Oh, God. Crazy.
And when does Greg get sick before the wars, during the wars?
Yeah, a few years go by, and the three of us are living a great life. We have our time together. Everybody's happy. There's no problems. Things happen, where guys got to get hit or whatever. But that's normal. But around 84, 85, what started the whole change of our life was Giuliani and the commission trials. Because all the heads of the families, and the word we were never supposed to use, commission, that is used all the time now, were put to trial, and they all got big time life, 130 years, 150 years.
RICO laws are.
Right.
Right.
So none of them were coming home. So Junior Persico, our boss, has to name somebody to take his part. He doesn't do it right away. It was a little bit of a musical chairs thing at first. It's from 84 to 85. Around 85, he picks out Vic Arena, who's a relative and a high-ranking captain. Not a vicious guy, not even a known killer, but he made a lot of money. So he elevated that way.
Sure.
And about that time, Greg had gotten arrested for a couple of things went wrong. First of all, we did a bank score that we almost got caught at. 3 of the guys did get caught. Let me tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
It took time to develop this bank. And Linda was telling me the whole time, because she's asking me if I want to be part of the score. And again, now I'm 23. I says, I never robbed the bank. I says, I don't know how to do, how. She says, no, Greg, they got inside people, they got this, you get the boxes, you take all the money, you're going to make like $2 million.
Easy peasy. Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
23 years
and
old,
she
2
kept saying
million.
he never got caught, he never gets caught, he never gets caught. So finally, I said, okay, I'm in. So I really got a couple of good jobs on this thing because, well, first of all, 3 young guys that are really fit, we have to break in the wall and get in there. But then once everybody's in and they start doing the torches and everything, and once we get in, I'm gonna be driving the stuff. It's gonna be so much stuff to take out. Like, it's something like 5,000 boxes in this bank. It was ridiculous. And Carmine Sessa developed a way to get every box. It's very hard to do that. Guys, in the old days, you'd see them banging in, so maybe you get a couple hundred boxes and get lucky.
Right.
He figured if we could torch the perimeter, pull them off the wall, lay them down on the floor, and then torch the back metal piece out, we could get every box from behind. We needed an extra day, so we had to do it on a holiday, where the Monday the bank would be closed.
Right.
So we do it on Washington's birthday, which is also my birthday, the day before. I'm the 21st, he's the 22nd. So a few weeks earlier, Joe Brewster, one of our later hits, believe it or not, I go take a ride with him. And we call it the bakery, take a ride to the bakery, the one we zeroed in on. And he's the mastermind. He really is, coordinates everything. He throws a rock through the window. He wants to time the police response. So I guess it took, 90 seconds for the cops to get there. I don't remember exactly, a minute, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. Whatever it was an eternity for us to get out and jump the fence and go if something went wrong. So he was satisfied. The score night comes and it's miserable weather. It's snowing, but it's perfect. That's exactly, you don't want anybody out.
That's going to delay your, yeah.
Right. I remember one of them saw this is perfect for us. Yeah. So we get there and we get in and all of a sudden, footsteps. So they're upstairs, the cops were upstairs. What happened was, in a nutshell, the vice president of the bank, not even the president, the vice president of the bank puts a backup alarm system after that window broke. Direct to the precinct. He didn't even tell the bank president. He didn't, sharp guy, didn't have, the vibe. So that night, Joe Brewster, Carmine Sessa, and Bobby Zam get arrested. They're caught out in the parking lot because Joe Brewster left his car. It was the only car in this blizzard weather in the parking lot, and it has Jersey plates. So a good cop, the FBI would have never figured it out, but a good New York cop saw that car was out of place. Now, if I would have told the FBI agent, look at that car, go get it, they would have ascertained that it was a bank robbery in progress. So anyway, they get pulled over, and they got walkie-talkies, they got cinder block all over them, everything but a confession, okay? But the best part is, Greg says, I got the lawyers. He hires lawyers. It takes 2 years, and these guys only get probation. Wow. Should have been our first thinking, what did he do? How the hell did they? You got 3 known wise guys.
So did they turn the case over to the feds, or was it a state case?
Well, I believe it was feds because it's a bank, right? Wouldn't it
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well, you could do it both.
Okay, all right. Well, probably feds because that's where he was able to do something.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. I never thought about that. But so anyway, I remember telling, I had to call him up. I had to be the guy to call him. Tell Greg, the party's over. And on the phone, like, what do you mean?
The
I
bakery's
says, what do
closed.
I mean? We got arrested at robbing the bank. What do you want me to say? The party's over. The people came that weren't invited. I'm trying to talk in riddles to him. And he says, he's mad. He's all right, get back here. I get back there. Him and Scarpa are sitting there. They thought it was Christmas Eve. You were just waiting for me to start bringing this stuff. And they just were so mad at Joe Brewster that they never really forgave him. And eventually it led to him, you know, getting killed later on. But that was the bank score that went bad. And you asked a question, and I went through that whole story. I forgot where we were supposed to be with that.
No,
But,
That's
yeah,
good.
but,
That's a great story.
So, how did the Colombo War start?
Okay. All right. So,
You
so
had, Teddy Persico, Alley Boy.
well, that's where we were, and that's why I said it. So that Greg, this was eating away at him. Okay, we thought. Then we were doing the credit cards too, the fake credit cards at that time, and he gets set up by the Secret Service, not the FBI, the Secret Service. So he gets arrested. He spends 4 hours with the FBI. Me and Linda go pick him up. No bail, no handcuffs, nothing. Now again, I don't think nothing of it. I don't even think to say, because I had never dealt with FBI and law enforcement, nothing like this. We drive him home, but it's been bothering him that he got him. So he should have known better. He should have known. And eventually, he winds up with ulcers, a totally ulcerated stomach. But it was also because he would take Anisons every day, 3 Anisons.
Anison. Boy, I hadn't heard that.
3 of them, and he popped them in his mouth. No water, no milk, no coffee. He had me doing this with him. He says, "No, this way you won't get a headache later after we go have a few drinks." But at least I drank something with it. I drank water. I go get a carton of
No
milk.
headache, but
I
also
wasn't
no-
just going to
no stomach
take 'em
lining.
like he did, right?
Right.
So one day, I get a call, and I go to the house. He's hunched over the toilet, throwing up blood like crazy. I mean,
wow.
an enormous amount of blood. I don't know what the hell was going on. We get him to the hospital, and he's got to undergo emergency operations, which, again, to cut it short, he's in the hospital getting operated on, I want to say 2 straight weeks, about 10 operations.
Oh, because he has multiple ulcers.
But not
so they've
only
gotta
that,
be
the doctor that did it rushed the first job. He shouldn't have done it because you're not supposed to do back to back, and the other guy wasn't there. Something went wrong. So he left an artery hanging. And he's bleeding again. The doctor had to turn him over, and he starts bleeding again. So this went on. He lost all kinds of weight. He bring the family. He's probably not going to make it, this and that. So while this is happening, Greg Jr. is on the lam. Okay, so the world is crumbling
Right.
from the drugs. Not supposed to do drugs. Another rule.
So Greg,
Remember, one was already broken. Now this rule is being broken.
Right.
Okay, they got, Greg Sr. should have been the top of that indictment. He was the boss. Unfortunately, because of his connections with the law, later on we find out, Gregory takes the hit. Not that he was innocent, like I wasn't.
Right.
Gregory knows that, but he took the extra hit, the kingpin 20 years, the racketeer, everything, where he could have done his time for dealing drugs and started over. So all this is happening, and at the same time, Vic Arena takes over the family. He's the acting boss, okay? And along the way, Vic Arena decides, because he was weak, and he's listening to other people in the family that don't like Junior Persico for whatever reasons, and they all had their reasons. Again, I could go into all of them, but along the way, I'll tell you 1 or 2. So he feels if he could get enough of those people that don't like Persico, and they back him, one of the main culprits is John Gotti. He wants Vic to take the family, because he doesn't like Junior, because Junior put him in his place years ago, before he was a boss, in jail, in prison. He won't let him sit with him. Plus, if he had his big ego, John Gotti, he wanted to control the commission. So if he had Vic Arena in there, their plan
got
was
more.
to kill Vic Arena, so his childhood friend, Joe Scopo, the underboss, that Vic named underboss, would step up, and it would be the 2 of them on the commission. So right there,
Right.
they got 2,
Right.
So this was all part of this whole treacherous thing that started happening. So Vic now has to figure a way to get the commission to back this. So he,
first, I mean, Persico's still in charge.
Junior Persico's the
He's
boss.
still the boss,
He's the boss.
but he's locked up.
He's locked up. He got 133 years.
So,
But he's the boss until he dies, till he steps down himself,
okay.
or all the captains vote him out
Vote.
unanimously, which is never going to happen. Because the minute you're made boss, you make your cousin the underboss. You make your son a captain.
You make sure you're not
You
gonna
make
get
sure you
voted out
put 10 or 12
unanimously.
capos out there that are not going to turn on you, whether it's sons, brothers, whatever. Then you got to be smart, political, and put other powerful guys in positions to keep everybody happy. So Vic made some mistakes, obviously.
Sure.
He goes to Jimmy Angelina, who's the consigliere of the family, for many, many years. And the consigliere is an untouchable position. You're not supposed to kill a consigliere no matter what. The men have to trust that guy. If he calls you in to a meeting at 2 in the morning, you know you're leaving that meeting alive. You got to. If you don't believe that, you can't be in the life.
Right.
So he brings him in, Vic, and he tells Jimmy to approach all the captains. And he includes Greg Sr., because Greg Jr. is away, who's an official captain. And Greg is real sick, but he's home now. And he says, see if you could sway them to our side, that I take this thing officially. Junior's never coming home. He puts up a good argument, and some people say Junior should have stepped down. And I say, you can have that opinion. But if you know the life, and he doesn't step down, he's the boss.
He's the boss, yeah.
And that's what Greg told me, and that's why we fought for Junior Persico. So Jimmy goes to all the captains, and he can't get them all to come over because the Russos are cousins. Greg's not going to come over. Well, I'll tell you what happened with Greg first.
He's not going to get the unanimous.
He's not going to get a
nope.
unanimous vote. So he sends, he tells me he wants to see Greg. So this guy, Chips, comes to the club and he tells me, says, Jimmy would like to see Greg tonight at his club. So I tell Greg, and I bring Greg to the club. I walk in, I see Chips, say hello. Jimmy comes over, I say hello. I says, Greg's outside. He said, you want to come in? I said, I think he wants to stay in the car. So he goes outside. They knew he was sick, Comes out. I'm about to walk away. Protocol. I don't need to hear what those two guys are talking about. Greg says, no, Larry, you stay. Jimmy, it's okay if he stays? And he had that way about him. Jimmy said, oh, of course, Larry, you could stay. So I lean on the car. I'm trying to make like I'm not listening, but I could hear. And Greg wanted me to hear. He's very smart, even after all those months in the hospital. So Jimmy lays it out. Vic wants to take this officially. He's talking to all the captains. He feels you're a captain. You're the eldest statesman in the family, butters him up. He says, would you back him if he does this? So Greg says, I just got out of the hospital. I said, this is too much for me. I said, wherever the chips fall, I'll be happy. I'll go wherever I'm told to go.
So he's trying to be Switzerland.
He don't want
to.
to,
He
exactly.
doesn't want to be.
But you hit it on the head. He's preached to me my whole life, you never wave two flags.
Okay.
So as soon as Jimmy leaves, I get in the car, I'm driving, the first thing out of my mouth, Greg, why don't you declare yourself? And he tells me, if I would have said I back Vic Arena, Junior has to whack me. If I says, no, Junior's my boss, Vic has to whack me. So he wasn't going to put himself in that
He
position.
was,
Who would have ever thought it? I mean, right there, especially after being on the deathbed for so long. So now, within 2 weeks, Jimmy Angelina goes missing. A consigliere. He's gone. He's dead.
yeah.
Okay. Vic Arena gets a message to Junior Persico that he heard Jimmy was polling the captains. He was trying to take over the family. Meanwhile, he ordered him to do it.
Right.
So that's why he's gone. Junior thinks Vic is protecting him. He now brings up Carmine Sessa, who was under Greg for many years. He's one of the guys that got arrested on the bank score. And he makes him the consigliere. He tells him, poll the captains, convince them to come over to the side so we could unify this thing and I take it officially. Carmine starts doing it. He comes to Greg. Greg starts laughing at him. He says, he's going to kill you next. He's
What
gonna
do you
the
think?
same
Yeah, do
thing
you
they-
not just see what
Right,
happened?
He's going to do the same thing to you. So now, Carmine, in all his wisdom, and I'm being sarcastic, decides he has to break rule number 3 and kill the boss. He just decides he's going to kill the boss. Right there. No meetings, no commission, no nothing. And that's mistake number one. Mistake number two, if he would have asked Greg, and Greg says, you know what? We got to take him out. Greg would have went with him, probably with me and Jimmy, and Vic Arena would have been dead. There would have been no war. But Carmine probably wanted to be the hero. And Carmine's the consigliere that, I told you before, if you get called at 2 in the morning, if Jimmy Angelina called me, I'd wake up, brush my teeth, get in the car and go. If Carmine Sessa called me, I'd wake up, brush my teeth, call Jimmy, say, Jimmy, get Smith & Wesson and follow me.
Right.
Because I don't trust Carmine. And obviously he proved his colors. So he goes to try to kill Vic, him and 2 other guys. Vic spots them. And to this day, I don't get it. I says, they made a big deal. He spotted us. So they ran away. They left. So he says, who cares if he spotted you? Go over to him, do what you went. If you had this plan, he spotted you. Like,
Does
what
it
is he going to
matter
tell
if he
on you
sees
after?
you-
I mean,
if he
it's
sees
just-
you before
it
you
made
kill
no
him?
sense. I just think they were weak. They really didn't have what it
More
took
to
to
the
do
story
it.
there.
So, Gregory is funny because I talked to him about this too. It's hard not to. We talked about it when he was away and even now. And he says, he says, if he spotted you, you just say, Vic, I got to talk to you for a minute. You're the consigliere. You're supposed to go see him. It's not like you were out of place at that point.
Right.
So they just weren't ready for this. So now there's a split. It's an official split. And a lot goes on. There's a lot of things that go on. One side is saying don't do business with them. This family is agreeing with him. This family is agreeing with us. Some of the families are split. So it's a little mayhem, But 2 of our guys die, the 2 Sapp brothers. And this is important to the war because there was a point where when the first brother died, Johnny, we're at the funeral parlor, and there's no Persico guys there. They're all Vic Arena guys. Me, Greg, and Jimmy come walking in, just the 3 of us. And we really don't know that all that's going on in the background because Greg's staying home and we're running our business. We don't know, but there's a complete split now. I mean,
Right.
so the room next to, the chapel next to where Johnny's being laid out is open. There's no bodies in there. So everybody goes in there to have a meeting. Vic goes up on the stage where the coffin should be, and he's talking to all the men. And he's telling them that Carmine, Jojo, Chucky, these guys, Teddy, they're rebels. They're going against us. He says, I'm giving them 2 weeks to come in or they're dead. He says, look, we got Greg Scarpa with us. Now, really, we weren't there.
No.
But after we leave, we get in the car, Greg says, go downtown. Go down to see Chucky, our captain, who's a Persico guy. So we go down there and we tell Chucky what just happened. And Chucky's a nervous wreck. I like Chucky, he was a good guy, but maybe a little too green for this situation too at the time, So I could see his nerves are unraveling. It's what he said, so we got to go to war, So left off that Greg is going to play the middle. Let them think I'm with them. So now that everybody's heading for the hills, except me, Greg, and Jimmy. We're driving around, picking up our numbers, not a worry in the world, because both sides think we're with them. Now the next Sapp brother dies, Joe Sapp, and he had about $300,000 worth of number business that came to us. But when the split happened, he had already been put on the Vic Arena. So they're claiming the numbers. Greg says, oh, no, those are ours. Those are ours. We got them since 1952, whatever he said. So they call me, they send a message to the runner that brings all this stuff to bring those numbers to Wild Bill, because Wild Bill is on their side. He doesn't like Junior Persico. There's a situation there too. So he's one of the guys that made this his reason to move on. So the runner comes and tells Greg, and again, I'm sitting right at the table. He says, Greg, Billy said if I don't bring him the numbers, he's going to put me in an oil can. Greg busted out laughing. He says, Chucky, this is another Chucky. You bring the numbers to me, I'll go see Billy Thursday night. So now, Chucky probably told Billy, Greg's coming to see you. This is a historical night in the Colombo family. We're at my pool room. There's 7 of us there, okay? And we're gonna go to see Wild Bill. The 3 cars drive, and as we get close, I see people all over. As I turn the corner, there's literally, okay, this is in court documents, it's been told by other people, hundreds of guys out there on Arena's side, just lining the street. They're waiting for us.
Wow.
So this is how sick in the head I got. I should just drive. A lot of normal people, sane people would have just kept driving. But I knew, Greg was in the car right behind me. I said, if I drive on, go back to that pool room, he is gonna embarrass me in front of the men for not pulling in, showing any fear at all. So I pull right in the driveway. I get out of the car, and as I do, I see Billy's blue Lincoln. There's a guy behind it with like an automatic, some kind of automatic machine gun. Later on, I see guys on the roof behind us, all with rifles.
So this is better than being made fun of back at the...
Unfortunately, yeah, that's how crazy it is. So I pull in, I
Okay.
get out of the car, and one of their guys comes running right over me with his gun out, Chicky, and he's a known shooter. And he says, put your hands on the car, put your hands on the car. I said, oh, am I under arrest? And he sort of smiles at me, puts his gun down. He says, all right. I says, Greg's here to talk to Billy. He just wants to talk to him. So he gets out of the car. There are about 6 guys walking around Greg to bring him in. I later heard they were holding the door shut. Don't let him in. This is how scared they were of Greg Scarpa.
Right, and all that
They
whole
got
show,
all that show. So he goes in. Now, the 6 of us are standing outside. And we got our little 38s. They got all this high artillery. And I remember the guys coming to me because all of Greg Jr.'s crew is gone now. They're all pinched from drugs. They're all away. I sort of skipped that again because it wasn't it's more when I want to talk about Gregory's story, which he'll talk about someday. They're all away. So they thought we were weaker too, which they were right. We were, but we recruited real fast. Got some good shooters with us real quick. And Greg and Jimmy and I grew up real quick. So we're out there, and one of the guys that comes over to me is an ex-cop. That's with us. He's the only one with a Glock, a good gun. So they're asking me, what do we do if we hear any gunshots or anything? I said, all right. His name's Dean. I says, Dean, you see the guy with the machine gun? You unload on him. And I told everybody else, run. That was my advice. I said, just run. You know, get it. I sort of a driveway for me and Jimmy to run through because we'd be dead out there. There's nothing. We're not winning.
Yeah. At this point, you got to outsmart him.
So,
You can't be...
Right. So anyway, he's in there for about 2 hours. I find out later he's making a speech to these guys, how wrong they are, how they shouldn't be doing this. Junior's their boss. He's been good to this family. He's doing 133 years. I mean, on and on and on. Some of them, he said, are just listening. They know he's right. He says 2 or 3 of them getting a little, like who the fuck are you in here? I'm sorry, cursing. Who are you to be talking to us that way? You know? So one of them's Nicky Black.
Well, there was heavyweights coming in and out there.
Yes, yeah. So we're out there, right? Exactly. And I'm watching one after the other. I see, Joe Waverly come, Patty Amato come, Lefty, this guy, that. Every big shot that they had, and ultimately Joe Scopo. The only one that didn't show up was Vic Arena. He's their king, and he's, like the chess said,
They got him
stashed
protected.
away. Right, because once he goes, it's over. So now, like I said, 2 hours goes by. I find out later on about this. But like Nicky Black, when they said, we're not doing business with anybody on that side anymore. But Greg's going to get those numbers. They're his. Nicky Black says, you just said we're not doing business. We got to pay him. He says, not him. They didn't want to rile him. He says, Greg's got the numbers and give him his 15,000. Right. And he shut Nicky Black up. But Nicky Black tried to make a stink about it. So he comes out. He gets back in the car. Well, he comes out. Remember how he walked with me after I came clean to him about Linda?
The swagger?
He puts his arm around Joe Scopo. He's walking out. And he told me later, he told Joe, he says, Joey, put this thing together. Vic's got to step down. You could keep the number 2 spot. He was offering him, you don't lose a position, but Vic can't keep it. And he told me that Joe says, I can't do that to Vic. Loyalty. Right. Understood. So we get back to the pool room. Soon as we get in, I had like an office in my pool room. We all go into the office. I open up the drawer. I get the vodka out. I pour everybody a little vodka. And I told Greg, I says, Greg, don't ever do that to us again.
Right.
And he respected that, and he laughed.
Right.
He laughed. He said, I had it under control.
No.
You had it under control. I said to him,
He doesn't get scared. He doesn't get.
I told him if it was the other way around, and they walked into our club, I know they're not walking out, Greg. I know that. I got it under control. He just didn't want to give up his ace in the hole or whatever he was thinking. You know, maybe he knew that the FBI was surrounding that whole situation. He might have known that, and nobody's going to do any shooting. It's, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's something, but somehow or another, he was always on. So anyway, we got those numbers. Now the next week, another number runner, the same thing happens. He's told to bring the numbers to this fat Sal Machota. So we call the runner in. He goes and tells Sal that Greg's getting the numbers. So he says, I'll come and see you at the candy store tomorrow. He tells us. We go to the candy store, and it's me, Greg, Jimmy, and another friend, Richie Brady, who did some big time, went on his own, and I think he's doing great from what I hear. He's living a good life somewhere. So I'm standing outside with Jimmy, and I see the big Lincoln pull up. He's got a big white Lincoln, Sal. And I see 4 heads in there. So I open the door. I say, Greg, he's pulling up. Because I don't think he wants to talk inside. He probably wants to talk outside. So he comes walking out the door, Greg. As the Lincoln is about to pull over, he sees Greg. They take off. So we're winning the war of will. We're showing them we're not going nowhere. We're taking care of business. You don't scare us, and you just ran off. Right. You know, so obviously it's, you know. A few weeks later, there's an attempt on Greg. And that's where he was coming out of the house with his grandson in his arms. His daughter was walking out. They were going to get in 2 different cars and drive away. But they had a truck parked on the corner, and a van, as soon as Greg got in the car, was going to pull out and follow him. That van chased me down once later on during the war. But they caught wind of it, so they jumped out with their pistols. Greg, and I wasn't there, and I'll tell you what happened here. I went to the gym as usual, and I walked to my pool room. That's what I did every day. And there was no reason for me to be there. He says, no, I'll meet you at the pool room, go open up, take care of business. But after this had happened, he made it clear to the whole family that I was there. He didn't want anybody to think I wasn't there.
That you were.
That one day I wasn't there, and this happens. You know, he said, you were there. I said, all right.
That would have given everybody the impression.
Well, some people could have. I don't think everybody would have thought that. Most, you know, many wouldn't have. There was
just
no
opened
way.
it up to.
It would have opened it up, right. Where was Larry?
Possibility,
You know, that's your number 1 guy.
Right.
But, you know, but he had enough guys with him and whatever. So I get to the club that day, up to my pool room, and I see Jimmy and Tommy sitting in the car. I go up to the window, and I thank God I didn't kid around and say, bang, or pick, you know. They had their guns out. I said, oh, what's going on? They said they tried to kill Greg. And you know, what, where, what the hell, what are you talking about? They bring me back to the house. I see the truck still blocking the street. The van is there. They had to all run to the getaway car. So the whole crime scene is still there, but nobody got hit. Little Linda's car has bullet holes on it.
That's his daughter.
She jumped
Yeah.
over the baby to cover the baby up. They should have called it off. I've had arguments with people over that. It's war.
You see a baby.
Yeah, but it's not. Come on.
No.
Right. You call. I called off 3 or 4 with Greg, and a couple of them, Greg got mad at me, but Jimmy agreed, and the right people agreed. One time Carmine didn't, but he was wrong there too. You're not going to hurt innocent people and take shots or people that are harmless. Right. Yeah, they did it. Well, they were getting antsy. We kept not. The news was having a field day with the hits. If somebody got hit, they put a scoreboard up. Persico's 3, Arena 0, or Arena 1. Persico 4, Arena 1. Right. It was becoming a bit of a joke. The headlines were like.
I mean, this is a well-known.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So let's go 2 out of line. So now, after that, Greg wants to retaliate. Carmine Sessa says, no, not yet. Let me try to put this together politically. He listens. A couple of weeks later, Hank the Bank Smory gets killed. He's on our side. listen to this. I'm in my sports office. And it's probably 6 o'clock. We work until 7:30. I get a call maybe 6:20. Greg, they got one of us. Come over after the office. I says, after the office? I says, what happened? Who got it? I'm afraid it's one of our close guys. He says, don't worry about it. Finish, take care of business and come afterward. Take care of business. We closed it. Well, we left it with amateurs, me and Jimmy. Guys that really didn't know, but they could write. You know, don't worry about moving lines or anything. So we left. We go there. We find out it's Hank. Carmine's already there with all his men. Carmine's crying. He's literally on his hands and knees begging Greg now what to do, you know. Actually, he was on his knees a little sooner when he screwed up on Vic Arena. That he wasn't on his knees there, but he was pleading for what to do. Right. I was seeing the weakness in Carmine all the way, right. You know. But Greg kept saying, "Nah, he's been around me since he's a kid. He'll be all right. He'll be all right." He fainted in my arms once when we accidentally hit a soldier from the Genovese family. That's one of the upcoming hits. I'll get to that. So now after Hank, I said, and this is where I changed. I really knew that I was no longer the Larry I once was. I told Greg in front of all the men, I says, because he still didn't want to retaliate. I says, one of us is going to be next. I says, they think we're just hiding. I says, Greg, I don't like it. I said, we got to do something. We have to do something to let them know. And he convinced Carmine, and he looked up at everybody there, and this is the exact words he used. It's open season. Just go out and find anybody you can find. So we started driving around every day looking for people. And the first one we got was, we saw Funzie D'Ambrosio. The reason he was on Vic's side was because years ago, his brother Sally D, probably one of the toughest guys ever in the family, right up there with Greg and these violent guys that you know about. And a lot of people say he should have been the boss of the family, Sally D'Ambrosio. But Junior had him killed. And Funzie D, the brother, never did anything about it. So it always had him as a weaker guy. Right. And so as soon as he had an opportunity to leave the Persicos, he left to that side. So we saw his car, we saw the club, we pull up. This is early on where it wasn't just the three of us. We had a van and a crash car, and somebody opened the fire too soon. So me and Greg were shooting because they were already scattered. We were supposed to get out of the van, walk over, and make it happen. Mm-hmm. Instead, somebody started shooting, so we had to open the windows and start shooting. We hit Joe Tolino in the foot. He went diving in the door. That was Nicky Black's nephew. We missed Funzie, the target, and we hit another guy that we seen go down. But this guy is a good fella with another family. Oh. So that afternoon, we meet with Carmine, and we had beepers then. We didn't have telephones. Sure. So we would hit the beeper, and the person would get the beep, and the first number was the person beeping. Like, say, 13 was somebody from 13th Avenue. Greg's number was, of course, 666. Right. So, say 13 came up. The next number was a restaurant that would be a certain number. Nathan's was number 2. Brennan and Carr, or Rolling Roaster was number 3. Number 1 was the diner, whatever. And then the time. So just a number up there, and that was our little code. So we meet Carmine. When we tell him that we found out, because we heard on the news, it was a soldier with the Genovese family, he fainted. I had to catch him. I had to catch him before he fell. He turned white. Oh, he's God, now we're going to have the chin against us too. Greg told him, take it easy. He said, he's a big boy, he shouldn't have been there.
Because the rule is you can't go after somebody in another family.
No, what happened was he shouldn't have been there. Okay. Greg was right. You know there's a war going on. Why are you going to a Colombo hotspot at a social club? You know you're going to be a target. We don't know who everybody is in there, but if you're in that club, you're a Colombo soldier or somebody. So anyway, he gets a message later on, Carmine, from the Chin himself, that his name was Tommy Amato. Right. Tommy was a big boy. He should have known better. Almost exactly what Greg said. So this is old school, that's life, So now there's more and more hits coming on. We get a guy later on, not to get into all the details, we could be here, we'll never end. We get the guy hanging a Christmas wreath. And what I was saying before, the Post comes out with a headline, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Okay, so there's a truce, because it's the holidays. John Gotti asks us not to shoot for a while because he's starting trial. Greg tell him, mind his own business. He says, this is our family, we'll do what we got to do. Right after New Year's, the truce is, there's one more meeting. Greg says, you go to the meeting, if they don't recognize Junior as the boss, tell them it's on again.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Open
just
season.
leave the meeting. We're back to where we were. If they say yes, Junior's the boss, continue. Then try to negotiate. But if they don't respect him as the boss, there's nothing to talk about. And there was a lot of weakness, a lot of weak people bringing messages. They didn't listen to what Greg said. If they would have done that. So anyway, a couple of days after January, well, in that few days earlier, Nicky Black, who is a heavyweight under Vic Arena, years ago, and my Uncle Albert was under him for a lot of years.
Okay.
And he shouldn't have been under him because he did more work than him, he was way tougher than him, he was more well-respected than him. Nobody liked Nicky Black. Nicky put something out about my uncle that was in the Army in World War II. Somehow or another, he did some time as a military MP, a military police guy. So when he came out of the Army, he came right back to the kids in the neighborhood, his crew, his gang. But Nicky labeled him a cop. So he never got his button for that reason, straightened out.
Right.
Comes out later on, Nicky Black took a motorcycle cop test. He wanted to be a motorcycle cop. Who's worse?
So, yeah.
But what happened was he was a very high-ranking guy in the Teamsters, maybe #1 Nicky Black, and he was making a fortune. So the captain that he was under,
Nicky in the concrete?
no,
scene?
I think he was trucking, Teamsters, trucking. Because I know a neighborhood guy that I grew up with was in the Teamsters, and he hated Nicky Black, hated him. And he was a good, legitimate guy, just a good truck driver, whatever. But he was a delegate for the union. So Nicky, his captain, because of all the money he's making, wants him to get straightened out.
Right.
So he gets-
Despite being
Right,
a
right.
motorcycle.
Junior does it, but he says, with the strict rule, he never elevates above soldier. Never be captain, never be consigliere, never be anything higher than that. He'll always be controlled by us. So the minute he had a chance to leave, he goes over with Vic Arena.
Right.
He sends a message to my Uncle Albert. This is my mom's brother. He's my godfather. That tell your nephew Butchie, that was my nickname growing up, if he doesn't come over to our side, and he mentions my partner Jimmy, childhood friend, he says, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill your nephew, and I'm going to leave Jimmy right in front of his tuxedo shop. Because we had a business there with Jimmy, you know. So we get this message, but somebody else in the club tells Carmine the same thing. So first we got it from Carmine Sessa. That night, I go to see my Uncle Albert. Open the door, he's there with his son Joey. Now, they know what's going on, and you know, we're technically on opposite sides, but we're not.
Right.
So I go in and I tell him what I heard. And my Uncle Albert says it's true. He says he's coming for you.
Wow.
He says, but, he says, remember this, blood is thicker than water. He was telling me that if you need help, you need to do something, whatever you want. I said, okay, now it's good we know. And we made him our #1 target, Nicky. And as luck had it, we spotted him a few days later. And we were looking at Funzy's club again, because we missed him the first time.
Right.
Figured he'd come back. And we see Nicky pull up. Well, I did. I had the binoculars. We were now driving around in a car dressed as cops. So we had, you know, baseball hats on, a blue siren in the window that was fired something out of Jersey.
Right.
You know, a volunteer fire, but we figured, who's going to know?
Right.
I didn't learn that until later on. Somebody brought that to my attention.
Right.
So we had that. We had coffee cups in the window, and we had our scanner in the window. So we were listening to everything the FBI was doing, the cops were doing, the task force. We knew everywhere they were, who they were following. So anyway, we're sitting there, and I'm watching the binoculars. That's Nicky Black. And Greg wakes up and he says, where? Let's get him. So we drive down the block. As we drive down the block, he pulls away. He was pulled in front of his car service that he had partnership in somehow. He goes around the block. You familiar with Avenue? Okay, so there's a triangle there.
Yeah.
Lady Moody Square or something. So he passes Pizza Park, he passes Joe's, which is his bar, comes back around his club, but makes a complete turn. He's coming back to where he came from. He has one more stop. He pulls over to a house where all their cars are parked every day in the backyard. They didn't know we knew, but we saw the cars in the back. And a guy comes running out of the house. He has an envelope. We later found out there was $15,000 in that envelope. That was never found. So I'm not blaming the cops, but somebody took that. Maybe his nephew. His nephew's in the car with him, and the guy Anthony that comes from the house. So as we're pulling up, Greg's getting worried. He says, "Jimmy, get up there, get up there." Jimmy knew what he was doing. He was like sort of going to maneuver at the right time.
Right.
So we pull up. Greg has the rifle he's been using, but with the dementia kicking in, he wasn't the same Greg. I didn't say that along, but he was slipping.
He's getting sicker
He
and
has the
sicker.
AIDS. The AIDS he had caught from a blood transfusion from all those
From the ulcer
from the old
surgeries.
hospital thing. Yeah, I mean that's why I say I could just go on and on. So now we pull up, but this one I'm involved in, whether he wants me to or not, because this guy just was going to kill me.
Sure.
So I want to make sure, you know. So I got a shotgun. It's a riot control shotgun that was stolen from the Lakewood police. Greg lives in Lakewood. That's where his other family is. So somehow or another, we got this shotgun. So we pull up alongside. Our windows are open. I got a baseball hat on, sunglasses, and a bandana. That's important because later on, a witness said I was a fat guy with a beard. And I asked the FBI later on, I said, "But have you told the judge that?" Because I was never fat. I never had a beard. So, I mean, that would have been exonerating in some
Yeah,
way. You know,
that would have been
if it
helpful.
really
That would have been helpful for
Yes,
your
yeah.
case.
But they shut right up. Nobody wanted to talk anymore. And another time they told me when they were following me in Cocoa Beach, they said, "I followed you for a month. All you do is work out." I said, "Are you going to tell the prosecutor that? That's what you saw for the last month?" Right. He shut up too. See, sometimes they say the wrong thing too. They should have done that. Anyway, so we pull up, and I'm about to lean out the window when I hear Greg's bullets falling out. He hit the wrong button on the rifle. So the bullets, instead of hitting the safety, he hit a bullet where the things came out. Maybe it fell and flipped over. I heard the thing trickling. But I was already leaning out the window, and I was about this far behind his ear. Something Greg told me earlier on a hit that a guy didn't die until he was on the way to the hospital. And he told me and Gregory, "I don't care how many times you hit a guy. You go up to him and you put one behind his ear." And he's looking at me and his son while he's saying this, like fatherly advice. And he says, "That's my trademark." So anyway,
Wow.
that's turned out that I put this shotgun rifle less than 6 inches from him, maybe 4 inches, and it was devastating. He was, obviously done. And as we drove off, I remember hearing Joe Tolino, the nephew, who was in the car, just screaming. We heard him screaming as we turned and drove off, So we went to Jimmy's garage. After we dropped Greg off, we went back to get rid of the car. Well, first we got rid of the car, then we dropped Greg off. We had to get back to Jimmy's house. Again, this is real important now. We had to get back to his house by 6 o'clock because we had to babysit his daughter. She's about a year old. And the wife, who has a bridal shop, has some appointments. It's only gonna take about an hour or so. So we get there just in time. She's a little pissed. She don't know what we just did. So now we're babysitting the little girl.
The disconnect.
Again, we're sipping something, whether it was scotch or vodka.
Remarkable.
And we put on Seinfeld. It's the episode where he's running with the loaf of bread.
Uh-huh.
And we're watching it, and like nothing happened. Playing with the baby.
Give me the Marlboro Rye.
She wanted the right
Yeah,
bread. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
so now after she comes home, we get back in a legit car, one of our cars, I think his. No, it was mine because I was driving. So we drive back past the scene, down McDonald Avenue. And it's surreal. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of bystanders. This is like if Gotti would have got hit in his neighborhood. Everybody knew Nicky Black.
Right.
And there he is in the car like that. And I pull up to these kids. There's teenagers. And I open my window and I said, "What's going on here?" I know. And they say, "Oh my God, they killed Nicky Black. There's a big mafia war going on." Like the teenage kids knew this. I looked at them, I said, "No kidding."
Wow.
I shut the window. But this is the funny thing, and I put this in my book because I'll never forget it. As I shut the window, the way the light was hitting it, I saw a reflection of myself.
Oh.
And I said to myself, there is a big mafia war going on. And it got real for a second. I just looking at myself. It wasn't like a dream anymore. I says, and I a major player in this. How did this happen?
Right.
From you know, I'm only 29 now. You know, there's some years that went by,
Right,
obviously.
that
but
decade has been
yeah, it's just
pretty
been
remarkable.
unbelievable.
What
So,
about your family too at the time? Was your dad calling you?
well, they didn't know how deeply involved I was, but my father would tell me. He knew because of Greg, and he was listening to the news.
Right.
He knew that was going on. He knows how tight I was with Greg. And I remember him telling me, why don't you go down to Florida? Just get out of here.
Just go.
Just go for your safety. And I told him, I says, would you leave your guys in a fire, Dad? And he looked at me and says, it's not the same.
Hey,
Yeah.
we put together a list of like
Mm-hmm.
the 30 incidents in the war. Maybe one or two just were acts of violence, whatever. Why don't we hit from Nikki Black down? There's a lot. So just a quick comment on it, maybe
On,
on all the different acts
yeah.
and the.
Well, you know.
Just because it's
yeah.
a timeline.
Yeah, I
I'm
get
not
it.
going to have been
Yeah,
there for some
yeah,
of this stuff.
yeah.
But just to say,
Yeah.
that was whatever.
Right.
Um,
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so an attempt on Larry Sessa?
Yeah, that's Fat Larry, yeah.
Yeah.
Fat,
Oh,
La-
Fat.
yeah. Fat Larry was one of the younger guys that were being groomed by us guys like Jimmy and myself and some others, Joe and it got to the point where he wanted to get involved and make a name for himself too.
Sure.
So we have this one potential target that comes to a factory right across the street from my pool room. So we know his routine. He's going to come about 2 o'clock, go in, pick up money, come out and go. So we're waiting in the pool room, and this is going to be Fat Larry's first hit.
Okay.
He's in there with Jimmy. Jimmy's going to be the backup in case he freezes up. It happens.
Right.
Me and Greg are going to be in the place in case the guy tries to run through to the back door or whatever. So we're already in there waiting. So Fat Larry, you got to realize how fat he is. I mean, he is the number 10 if you walk next to him, you know. There's a 1 and a 0. I mean, but he's got everything on him. He's got FL in diamonds. He's got Fat Larry in diamonds. He's got a ring that says FL. I mean,
So he's embraced
yeah.
his,
So anyway, he's out, he's ready. He's got this hat on, this type of hat, you know, a ski hat, but folded up. Jimmy don't know it at the time. He's just wearing a hat. So he tells us afterwards, Jimmy tells the story. He's funny. He says they see the Lincoln pull up. And first thing Larry does is pull his ski mask down.
says nobody's going to recognize him.
Jimmy looks at him. Jimmy looks at him. He looks him up and down and he goes, ooh, they'll never know you now. They come out, they go up to the car. We find out it was some young kid. It was probably a son or a nephew that he has to go pick up the money. And Jimmy says, get the fuck out of here. Don't ever come back, whatever. The other side would have shot him. That was their MO. But we didn't do that. And then Greg came out and he says, what happened? He told us, and then we laughed a bit about Larry. Soon afterwards, they try for Larry. He comes out of a salon getting his hair done, a men's hairstylist place, and one of Wild Bill's guys is standing on the corner, Chicky. I got one more story for him after that. So Larry comes walking out, and he sees a white Lincoln pull up, which is a bunch of soldiers of Wild Bill's. They get out of the car. Larry sees them, so he pulls out this Clint Eastwood type of gun. I mean, it's big, and it's got a laser on it, so those guys all stop. Chicky comes running out of the candy store, shoot him, shoot him. So they start shooting. Now this fat guy is running, and even the witnesses that were talking later on the news are saying the guy was so fat they couldn't hit him. They're shooting, nobody didn't touch him. And he's probably aiming back and shooting whatever. So luck has it, one of our guys hears the gunshots, and he would just happen to be coming down McDonald Avenue. He turns the corner, he sees Fat Larry running
towards him.
He opens up the door, he jumps in, but now he's heading toward the shooters. So Larry leans over, the guy leans over. As he's driving through, he's like this. And somehow or another, he gets hit in the shoulder, and he loses his finger, and his pinky gets hit. But if he was up here, it might have got a bullet in the back of the head.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
anyway,
Well, he's
he
already
takes
beat the
off.
odds running down and getting in the car.
And Larry says, Fat Larry's telling us this story later on. Fat Larry's telling us a story later on. I got to say this. I know you could edit. I don't want to use his last name. He's back out in the street.
No worries.
Fat Larry, later on, because they're being chased by the shooters now, and the shooters run somebody over now. They pass a precinct on the way to the pool room to come and see us. As he gets to the precinct, Larry takes the gun out and he throws it. They get arrested for that gun because a kid, 13, 14-year-old kid, saw Larry throw the gun out, got the plate. So the shooters got away. Larry gets arrested. He gets out on bail real quick at the time, whatever it was.
Sure.
And he's telling us a story. He said, I get away from all this. He said, some innocent bystanders
Some
got
little kid gets
innocent
catches you for
bystander. Yes. Oh, no, he said
gun.
some good Samaritan. He called him a
Oh,
good
good
Samaritan. The good
Samaritan.
Samaritan has to come out, 13 years old. So now I'm in this mess. So, and as this is going on, you know, we're all wearing bulletproof vests, you know, shooting at Joe Waverly, he's shooting at us, shooting at this guy. There's a whole bunch of incidents and meetings and stuff. One that got real close to home was, I'm at my house in Brooklyn. I now have a wife, okay? Somewhere in that 10 years, I actually got married. I know. And I have a son.
So you and Linda have ended
It took a
in
little
that,
to
in
do,
that
but
time
yes, yes,
frame,
yes.
and you now have a wife.
Yes. So my son is an infant. He's 1 year old, you know, if that old. But I would sneak home so I could spend some time. That day, I'm leaving. I have to go meet my brother-in-law in Manhattan. 99 out of 100 times, I leave my house, go to the corner, and make a left. Now, one day, I'm going to Manhattan, so I'm going to make a right, go park by the train, get on the train, and go. As I pull down the street, I see Frankie Notch's car, or Chickie's car. Chickie was driving. I remember to this day, it's a gray Delta 88, popular car back in those times.
Yes.
And I see Frankie Notch next to him, two other guys in the back. I get to the corner, I make a right. As I make the right, I see that van make a U-turn. They were gonna box me in.
Right.
So now they're both following me. I go probably, you know, from, if you know Brooklyn, 65th Street and 20th Avenue, all the way to McDonald Avenue. And there's the Avenue I Flea Market there. So as I get to a corner, I see a school bus coming. So I cut the school bus off, not really dangerously, not trying to, you
No,
know,
but
but enough
that's a
that
really-
I know they can't get out. But they cut them off too. They cut them off, the two cars. So now I said, okay. I pull into the gas station, I jump out, and I have one gun on me. I didn't have my bulletproof vest because I had to go on the train. I'm going to go to the city at a meeting. I put the gun over, like TJ Hooker. I put the gun over the car and I pointed it at them, and they all held back. And I realized, I said, nobody wants to get killed. I I realized it, but they had me. All they had to do was come in. You know, I would have shot and ran. I don't think they could have caught me if I started running and maneuvering. But they take off. I park the car real quick. I go up, and I watched them a block away. 1 block away, they're all congregating. Now they turn around, they come back, and I'm on both sides of the train looking at them, you know? So now they go by my car. So now I couldn't go get my car for a while. And that was a special event, trying to pick up the car knowing that they knew it was there. So we had to go, and we had enough manpower that even if they were there, they wouldn't have done anything. So this goes back and forth, and then Larry Lampese, towards the end, we get information that he comes out at 3 o'clock in the morning, or 3:30.
And the school bus.
Yes, because he has a school bus company, so he's got to get to the office real early, beat the drivers there, whatever. So we hear this from who we understand is Greg's girlfriend. He keeps saying it's his girlfriend. He has somebody out there giving him information. We think it's somebody on the other side.
Okay.
So this one, and this is again where my whole demeanor in life changed. I remember saying, you know, we got Nicky Black, we got this, and we got this, and we got 4 or 5 guys. We're shooting them every time they show up, and they're just not quitting. They're just not giving in. I says, we got to do something special. We got to massacre somebody. I
Right.
use those words.
You gotta, I mean, something's got to end it.
Yeah,
You got to have
I
a
says,
significant event.
nothing is going to work. So we get the info on this guy. We pull up about 3:15. Within 10 minutes, the lights go on. We see them come. He pulls out of the driveway, like they say, his apartment building, and he gets out of the car to go lock the gate. That's when we pull up. So we shoot him. He's on the floor, and we walk over to him, me and Greg. And I remember him saying something like, "What did I do, or do it already?" I don't know what he said, but "do" was in there. Do it, or what I do. And we opened up on him with the shotgun and the rifle. And then Jimmy, who's the driver, is really not supposed to get out from behind the wheel. He comes over, and what does he do? He puts one behind his ear. So this guy, they had to see that. This guy got hit with all kinds of bullets, all kinds of different guns. And we drove off. And every time we drove off, it seemed to get closer and closer. We either heard helicopters or we passed cops the other way, but they got to go to the scene first. I guess, they can't leave a guy there, so whatever. But there was a few like that where they were just mad shootouts and stuff, so.
Greg, how was Greg's relationship with Joey? Kid.
His son?
Yeah.
Well,
Because Joey starts getting in trouble with
yeah,
pot
yeah.
and selling weed.
Joey was his youngest kid, his youngest son.
With Linda, right,
yeah.
right.
And as a kid, no different than me or a lot of us probably, he was a loving little kid.
Yeah.
I would go sit on the couch, and if he was that far away, he'd have to come and sit right next to me.
Right.
He was 7 years old. I put my arm around him. I took him to ball games. I made him join baseball. I made him join karate. I was like that big brother.
You're like, yeah.
When Greg got sick and he wasn't around that much, he lost whatever control he had of the kid, and he wouldn't go to school. So I would tell Linda, "What do you mean he's not going to school? Let's bring him there." We'd bring him, watch him walk in, he'd walk out the other side. Every afternoon I'd see him at the club. And I tried, but how much can I do when he has a real mother and father? I mean, how much can I do? I tried. And he then got into the easy money with the drugs, like Greg Jr. was doing. And because of his name, he was been, bullying people. And ultimately, later on, he paid for that. They killed him, a rival drug dealer or whatever the situation was. I was away when I heard about it. I wasn't shocked. But I felt terrible. I mean, he was my godson. That's how close we were as a family at one point. He picked me over his brother and anybody else to be his godfather. So.
And then he had a beef, and Greg went with him.
Well, that was late. Yeah, that was towards the tail end of the war.
Was it?
Yeah, the war was just about over. Everybody was heading for the hills. Who was hiding out? Who was on, ankle bracelet arrest, whatever they call it, home detention, and I get a call from him to come over. He tells me on the phone, "Bring Betsy shots." So I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll be right there." He's telling me to bring my shotgun. So I go, I said, "What's going on?" Tells me that Joey just had a beef with a kid over a drug spot. At that point, it had nothing to do with the drugs.
No.
And I says, "Let me go talk to the guy and see if I can settle it," because I guess he pulled a gun on Joey. Joey chased him with a baseball bat. So I'm trying to end it. And we go driving around looking. We can't find him anywhere. I get back to the house, and I tell Greg, I says, "Look, he's not around. He probably knows it's hot." I says, "Why don't we talk to him tomorrow when everybody cools down?" He agrees with me. I turn around, I drive home. I just about get back ready to get in bed and watch TV and relax. The phone rings. And I don't even answer it, but I hear the message. It's Linda. Frantic on the phone. "I need you, Larry. Please hurry. Come over. Come on." I mean, frantic. I know something horrible happened.
Right.
I get in the car. I go. As I drive by the block the kid lives on. There's more cops, firemen, ambulances, people, FBI. You can see their cars are there. I go right to the house, and in the front of the house is the car that I was in just earlier. And Joey's friend is in the back seat, and I hear him gasping for that last breath of life. Every few seconds, he's dying. He's dying right there. He's got a bullet in his head. I go up the steps, and as I'm going up, this is something that I've spoken to little Linda about afterwards, and she said she called the ambulance. I had said, "Call an ambulance." And she said she did, and I don't disagree that she did. I'm not going to argue that. I didn't know at that point, that was my thinking. But I did know that she had the wherewithal. And again, this isn't her fault. She got mad at me over this once before, but it's not her fault. It's the upbringing. She knew to bring that gun down the block and throw it in the sewer or throw it in a garbage pail somewhere. She knew to get rid of Greg's weapon. That's sad. Think about that.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
said she called the ambulance. Okay, the kid died anyway, regardless. So I go in, and Greg is sitting there at the table. He's got a scotch. He's got a towel that's turning red. It was a white towel that's turning red. And he's on the phone with the probation department because he was on probation. He wasn't supposed to leave his house. Telling them, no, I never left the house. There must have been a malfunction. So now he hangs up, takes a sip of scotch. He says, Larry, go see if he's okay. Because Linda's crying. She don't know where Joey is. She thinks he's dead. So I go there. I don't see any body bags. I don't see any body, nothing, no, nothing. I get right back, and I tell her, he's okay. He's not there. He had to run off somewhere.
Okay.
So now I got to bring Greg to the hospital. So there's 3 hospitals right in the vicinity, right in the neighborhood. I could bring any one of them. He insists on going to Mount Sinai, all the way at the other end of
Furthest.
Manhattan. But those are the ones that saved him, and he has a place in his heart. He trusts them. So the lawyer Larry gets him in the car, blood full of AIDS all over my car. I got a baby at the house. I drive him. I got to go through toll booths with cops if they notice him dying in the car. Just bringing him to the hospital. So I get to the hospital. I walk him in. The nurse comes over. What happened? So I says, the wife called me. I think he fell in the yard and landed on a pipe, because you could see his eyes. So she says, all right, fill out these papers. You got to fill out papers no matter what, So I'll fill them out. So as I'm filling them out, she comes back out. She must have saw his eye now with a bullet hanging out there. The reason it didn't go, it deflected off the car and the bullet went in this way.
Okay.
So it took his eye out, but it didn't penetrate to the brain. That's how he survived that. But she comes out, sees the bullet. She tells me, like Nurse Ratched, you stay right here. Like, I'm really going to listen. I said, okay, I'm going to fill out the papers, ma'am. So I make her fill them out. She walks back in. I go over to the window. I see Greg. I open the door. I says, Greg, I got to go. This is it. The last time I saw him in the free world, he went like this to me. Gave me a thumbs up. I walked out, got in my car. No sooner than I get in the car and drive off, 3 or 4 cop cars pulled up with the lights. I go back. Now I got to rally the troops. And this was, to me, one of the lowest parts of the war, because we were winning, and it almost took a drug dealer that had nothing to do with the family, nothing to do with us. To me, a lowly drug dealer, I probably making myself a target to somebody now, but and Vic Arena wins because of that, because of this stupid, demented mind that he had to go out and shoot it out with these kids. He went back and shot with his son, and the son ran away, but was able to, some little kid protected him, put him in a garbage pail in the backyard. So he was able to hide and get home later on.
And eventually he would be killed, unfortunately.
Eventually, yeah, he would be
Right,
killed.
right.
So Greg doesn't make it out of he goes from the hospital.
He goes to the
jail.
hospital, to
Goes to
jail.
the
First, they
hospital,
took him to Rikers because they had the best AIDS ward, and he had full-fledged AIDS now. And plus, there was a lot of separations going on. So I wasn't arrested for a few more months, several months, like towards the fall. So I was out there for 6 months, and I remember him telling me that his girlfriend was saying, "Just stay low, lay low. You guys will be okay." There really was no direct evidence to anything. Again, but once guys start talking and flipping, the FBI, that's all they need. One Carmine
One
says
guy.
it, then this
Right.
guy says it, and Joe Brain says it, and this guy says it. Then, of course, later on, while I'm in, and I see all the different separations, they can't put you in this one, that one, that one, I start seeing more of the treacherous stuff happening. It comes out about Greg.
Right.
That Greg, my boss, is an informant
Is an
for 30
informant.
years. For 30 years. So I find that out on the floor with Vic Arena. Why did they put me with him? We were all on separation. Nobody, but they put me with him. And the day before, he comes to me, he says, there's rumors Greg's a rat. I went after him. And 2 other
Yeah.
guys from
Yeah,
another family
you
says,
never
"Lad,
would've-
stop. We don't know for sure, but we're hearing." I said, no, you're not going to call him Greg a rat. Impossible. Not while I'm here. Whatever. So I separated. Went and sat on the other side of the prison with the black guys that I played ball with, some friends,
Right.
you know, instead of staying with the Italians. And the next day, they put me on another floor after that. And just before that, they had me in the same cell as Greg. Why are they putting us together? Everybody else is apart. You
right.
put me. I think they thought he would talk to me about cooperating or try to save my life, but he didn't. I think he knew I was too far on the other side now, and he just couldn't do that. He couldn't take the chance. I could have killed him in the room. You fucking rat! How could you do this to me? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would have reacted. I don't know. So now, they put me on the floor with Ali Persico,
Oh, wow.
Judy Persico's son.
Alley boy.
And he tells me, I'm talking to him, I'm saying, I don't believe this. I can't believe this came out about Greg. I said, what are we going to do now? He tells me and my father knew about Greg for 20 years.
Wow.
So when he said that, a light went on. Because now I'm wondering, did Scarpa know?
Uh-huh.
Who else in the family knew?
Right.
You know,
So why wasn't he killed if they,
I researched that, and I got an attorney to tell me that 20 years is about the time Ali said there was a big tax case going on, and about 8 heavyweights from the Colombo family were facing big time. Back then, 15 years was big time, okay? And it was Junior's brother Ali, not little Ali, 1 or 2 of the Fuscos. Scappy was on that, Greg Scarpa, maybe Sonny Francesi, 8 heavyweights.
Right.
So they go to the first court hearing, and at that hearing, they, you know how they usually put them off. What do they call it when put it off for 6 weeks? There's a word for it. So they have their little meeting, and they say, "Oh, we'll meet again, adjourn until 6
Adjourn,
weeks."
yeah.
They come back. 6 weeks later, all of them are there except Greg. They have to call the meeting. Okay, let's set it up for 6 weeks. Happens again. They all come except for Greg. The third time, it happens again. Finally, the fourth time, the same thing happens. They're all there. Greg doesn't show up. The judge throws the case out.
oh,
True story. So either they knew he did something behind and then figured it out themselves, but here's why they didn't kill him. He was an enormous earner. And
okay.
anytime there was a hit that was over and above the call of duty, like the war, who was the hero? Greg.
Great.
When the girl had to be killed, who'd they go to? Him. You know. Now, in fairness, and I heard, you know, in one of the interviews, Gregory, he hit it on the head. If you're told to do it, unfortunately, you got to do it or you're going to get hit yourself. But they still knew to go to him. They knew there was, why put a guy in jeopardy when they know Greg will do it? You know,
Sure.
so there's two sides to that, you know. But anyway,
And you also started thinking back then when you hear about DeVecchio, Lynn DeVecchio, that you recall a conversation that Greg
Yeah.
had once, and
Well,
he
there-
never talked with women.
Yeah.
Or,
well, once now, to fast forward, I'm not going to be the last man standing. Not with all this going on. Everybody knows Carmine's are at, this one's are at, Greg's are at. I said, what am I going to be, a hero?
Right.
For what? You know, I said, there's no reason to anymore. I mean, it's just, and the other thing, very important, if Greg wasn't, I couldn't, because I would never jeopardize my family. Greg Sr., not Greg Jr., Greg Sr., and I've said it, would kill my father, my mother, my brother, my sister, my dog, my cat, my 2 cats, and anybody else.
Well, it's just like
To
you said in the
stop me.
beginning, you thought he loved you,
Yeah.
but then
No,
later you
I
realized
saw
that
it along the
he-
way. Yeah, even with his own family and about money, he didn't love anybody. No. So I couldn't. I had to take. So I was negotiating 20, 18 years. I was hoping for. I said, what if I get Jimmy to come in under my umbrella? We could do something together. You'll save you guys trying to find him. They said they had no idea where he was. But anyway, so now, yeah, I made a decision to do that. And now it all comes out slowly but surely about this alleged corrupt agent at the time named Linda Vecchio. And there was a world of things that I knew. I just didn't know his name, and I couldn't really point to him. The closest I saw of him was in a hospital when we would meet. Greg would bring me somewhere to meet, and I would meet with anybody. As I told you, I was there with Jimmy Angelina, at all the meetings with the boss of our side during the war, Joe T. I was right at the table at every single meeting with all the heavyweights. But there was one meeting he would never let me and Jimmy come to, and it was at Mount Sinai Hospital. He would go into the cafeteria. So one day, Jimmy and I, it has a square in the door so you could see people coming in and out. We went over and looked, and as he was walking away, we were both like, who the hell are those guys? Still not thinking that. We don't know. Maybe it's somebody, one of the other families. Maybe they're going to work something out. You know, we're hoping. But turns out he was meeting the feds there.
Right.
So there were things. We had we were getting addresses, number one, of our enemies. We were getting, I had a shoe phone that,
A shoe phone?
the old shoe phone, like Get Smart. You know, they used to
That's
use.
what I was just gonna say.
They used to use those big phones before cell phones.
Yes,
Nobody had them,
yes.
but we had one.
Yes.
And he
Was
would
it a
talk.
bag?
He would
A bag
talk
phone?
every day to his girlfriend
Mm-hmm.
on the phone constantly, constantly. I have that. They used to give you an itemized invoice every month of your calls.
Mm-hmm.
So they were asking me, who was he calling? I said, just go look. I said, I gave it to them, you know? That never came up. The phone list never came up. We had the scanner
Interesting.
where we had the secret 5-digit code that the task force with the FBI were using. I even knew their nicknames, Charlie Cougar. This Charlie Cougar 1, Charlie Cougar 2. That's what they were calling them. So they all had Cougars. They were all driving the same Cougar. So they were easy to spot after a while. But they didn't know we knew. We were listening to them. So we're listening to all this. And with the scanner, and then we get an address where Vicarina's hiding out. We go there. It's an empty lot. Later on in the trials, it's found out that the prosecutors, they all knew that a lower level FBI agent got this information from somebody in the street, that this is Vic's hiding spot. He gives it to his superior, who's Linda Vecchio. That same wrong address winds up in Greg Scarpa's hands.
Oh.
If it was the right address, they'd have all the arguments in the world. Well, he got it from somebody. We had it too, you know. But how do you get the same exact wrong address?
Wrong address.
Then we had the
Sure.
information on, you know, Larry Lampese when he came out. Goes back to the Joe Brewster hit, the Nicky Black hit. They were insisting that he called Linda Vecchio, because they were tailing Nicky Black the whole day. All of a sudden, we show up. The Vecchio calls them off. Come to headquarters. We got an emergency meeting. They all leave. They're not 10 minutes away. Nicky Black, they hear on the radio, Nicky Black shot for the police radio. They said, we were just there.
Yeah.
So all of these things led to him. So they
Right,
had a meeting
right.
with me once. They asked me, did you ever hear the name Lynn? And well, I think I brought that up. I said there was one time where we heard the name Lynn. And the reason it stands out to me and Jimmy is Greg never called any of his girls or wives or whatever by their names, because he never wanted to mix them up in bed. So he called them sweetheart, baby, honey.
Right.
This one day on the phone, he's saying Lynn. So I told him that, and one of the defense attorneys is asking me, didn't you hear the name Del, like Del Vecchio? I says, no, I never heard that name. She said, you told me just the other day that you heard the name Del. And I went like this to her, like the old password.
Uh-huh.
I says, I didn't say Del. I was, ask me, what name did you hear? She never asked me.
No.
And she would have said it, I would have said Lynn.
Right.
And I said, that's all I heard. It could have been, and then the obvious response, well, it couldn't have been Linda. It could have been, but I explained, just like I did, he never used their names. So that's up to you to figure out. That one time I heard Lynn. It could have been Linda, but that's odd, you know?
Right. Right.
So a lot of things like that. So
And then DeVecchio is put on trial.
he eventually gets put on trial by the state of New York. The feds won't do it. And the judge there, if you read his closing, that's like a thick closing thing. It's a bunch of pages, but I read it because he was a brilliant guy and very, very easy to work with. You know, the federal judges, they're no good. But this guy was realistic, and I had a lot of respect for him. Anyway, what he put in his closing, you know, ripped them apart, the FBI. He says, because you're walking out of here, don't think I think you're innocent. At the very least, you became the monster that you were chasing, a whole bunch of stuff. But what happened was, Big Linda, early on, she was questioned by a writer, Capisi, I think it was, yeah. And
Right.
she said, no, Lynn had nothing to do with any of this. Years later, she turned and said he did. And here's my answer to that. And I know I'm right without having evidence of being right, where I can put my hand on the Bible. But I know I'm right. After this all happened, the FBI continued paying her whatever they were paying Greg.
Oh,
So she protected him so she could keep
continue.
getting money, being an informant, being whatever, to keep her lifestyle. Once they cut her off, she says, well, the hell with him now. I'm going to tell the truth. Because she told the truth at the end. We all know that. You know, there's too much. FBI agents themselves got on the stand and said what I just said about the wrong address. And,
Yeah,
you know,
those are some.
so he skirted it, he beat it, but, you know, like other criminals, once in a while they beat it.
And so now, well, there's two things that I wanted to ask you about. One, which I think is a great story, is you get into a fight in a bar,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah, oh,
you
God.
don't know who this guy is.
Yeah. Well, this is, you know, the reason this comes up now, we'll say, because just chatting about it,
Yes.
you know, talking about Greg just the other day, you and I, that he really feared nothing and nobody. You know, had respect for some people, but he used to tell me, I may not be the toughest guy in the world, but there's nobody tougher. That's a great political way to put it. So anyway, it's just, this is probably the second time I'm telling this story. It's in my book.
So, all the things I hear about Greg, the things he's involved in, he seems to be fearless. He doesn't seem to sweat anything. He thinks kind of calmly about things, pretty much has good instincts on handle things. I mean, what was your take on it, you know?
Well, Greg, he was fearless. There's not a person on earth he feared. He did respect people. He used to tell me, I'm not the toughest guy in the world, but there's nobody tougher. That's a good way to put it. You know, you keep that opening. Junior Persico can't get mad, or somebody else, you know, he's giving somebody their due. And I've seen him in situations where we were 100% wrong, and we came out smelling like a rose, no matter who it was at the sit down. And there's one time in particular where I wasn't wrong, but I was in the after hours, which isn't a good place to be. Nothing good can happen, you know, at 5 in the morning.
Happens to cops too, yeah.
Right. So I'm there. I remember Kevin was there, Mario, a few of the other guys. Most of them were Gregory's crew, not Big Greg's. I was direct with Big Greg. And I get in an argument with this guy that I don't know who he is. And we take it outside. It gets a little arrogant, and it was over a girl at the bar, of course. And we square off, and I got the best of it. I hit him with a kick, a roundhouse kick. That at that time I was a kid, I was limber, I could throw kicks and stuff. I took kickboxing, as you know. And he went down to the floor. I could have continued on, whatever, but it was over, that was it. I walked away and left. The next day, I get a call late at night. I mean, it's after 12, I remember that. It might have been 2 in the morning. I was home, and it's one of those calls, you know, that phone rings, who the hell is this? You didn't have cell phones back then. So it's Greg, and he tells me, come to the diner.
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning, what? So is everything all right? He says, yeah, just come here. So I'm nervous. Now, it's already passed. He already knows about me and Linda, so I'm not worried I'm getting clipped for that. But I don't know what happened. I'm not even thinking about the night before. To me, it was nothing. It's Brooklyn, and those things happen. I get there. There's a big black Lincoln out there. I saw Greg's car, and I see Scappy's car. So I said, oh, my God, what's going on? In the black Lincoln is Sammy the Bull. Actually, he was standing on the next to it on the meter. So Greg comes out, and he says, where were you last night? I said, what do you mean? I said, we went out with the boys. You know, I went out with Kevin, Mario, and Gregory. He says, you got a beef? So I said, yeah, I got a beef. I'm thinking to myself, how's he know? You know, I didn't tell nobody. So he says, that was Paulie's nephew. I said, Paul who? Paul Castellano was his nephew. So now I'm saying, oh my God. So I go in, and I can't go over right away. Scappy's talking to Paul, because they're on the same level at the time. I think Scappy was acting as the boss. And I'm waiting there at the counter. Finally, Scappy calls me over. I sit down, and Paul goes into this thing where he wants satisfaction. I heard his nephew. And I tried to talk. Scappy shut me up, and he had a few things to say. But I remember saying, I says, I was out, we were drinking. It was an after-hours club. I didn't know who it was. Continues, he wants satisfaction. And he's getting a little arrogant now. So Greg is sitting right there, but he's not part of that because Scappy's got to do the talking. He gets up, and I seen him mad as I've seen him. He looks at Paul, he says, if the hair is harmed on his head, you'll see more bodies in the street. Scappy had to say, oh, Greg, please, let me handle this. Greg said, he walked away, he sneered at him, he walked away, he sat down. Wound up is, it got squared away, and I learned a valuable lesson. I now owed Scappy my life. That's how they get that loyalty. Because the last thing Paul said to me was, if it wasn't for that man right there, you'd be dead right now. So now I said, oh God, thank God, So I'll never forget that.
And
To
that's
me,
kind
that
of
was
like
a lesson.
mob bosses helping each other out in a way too.
Well,
like,
yeah,
it's, It's the
You-
protocol and the way you keep guys
But,
loyal to you.
Yeah, no, that's true. But early on, that shows you how Greg was. And I'll give him that till the day I die, as much as I'm upset with him now, to say the least.
And anybody
that-
else who was weaker would have suffered.
They
from
might have just said,
something.
yeah, it's possible. Yeah, we would have had to take a back seat. Maybe they would have hurt me without killing me. I don't know. But he wouldn't allow it. He protected us. I'll give him that, And he never, ever told me, Larry, go take care of that guy. Go shoot that guy. Go kill it. Nothing. He would tell me, take a ride. Right. Larry, take a ride. And I would go with him. He was always there. He was a man's man, literally, with his men. So for all his faults and all I hate about him, there were things that I admired, to say, I don't know if that's a good word to use, but you know what I mean.
Well, he had a major part of Mafia history, and
Yeah.
he was a bad guy,
Yes.
who could handle himself.
Yeah.
I'd always noticed that Connie, I would say Farace or Farace.
Yeah. Well, I knew it was Connie Farace.
Farace,
And even
okay.
Gus, a kid that made the news, it was
Right.
Farace until the newspapers made it real Italian.
Right. Well, even amongst cops, I think people were saying Gus Farace because
Yeah.
the press was
Yeah.
using it that way. But Gus went to meet with an undercover DEA agent. Deal goes bad, and he shoots and kills Everett Hatcher, the undercover agent. And now everybody's after him. Law enforcement is, all over the place. It looks bad for the mob. They're taking heat. It's the usual go out and bust chops everywhere. And so it's hurting business for the mob and everything else. So everyone's after him. What is your recollection of that era? Were you around then? Do you remember?
Oh, I was around. That was pretty much almost a heyday for me in the mid-'80s.
And so Gus's father was Connie's sister? Is that how it went? Or
They were brother and sister. His father and Connie were brother and sister. Yeah.
So when I came to learn this, I said to myself, I wonder if Greg had thought about, killing him, helping him get away, working out a deal. And did you?
Well, I remember agents coming
Right.
to see him, and he really didn't have any knowledge where he was. That much I know.
Right.
I don't think anybody did. And I remember there being an open contract out amongst the families. They had to put an end to this because, like you said, there was heat. I remember the heat. I remember the club being watched, people coming in, questioning. A couple of times, Greg would have me sit there, so they couldn't put words in his mouth because there was a relation. No, I remember that well, and I also remember when he finally got killed, we went to visit Greg Jr.
Right.
And they were first cousins. Although they had their moments, they weren't like, I won't say there was no love lost. They had their issues over the years, and both tough. Gussie was a tough kid too. But Gregory was sort of saying to his father, how'd you let this happen? He's still our flesh and blood. They just killed our cousin. He thought somebody should have protected him, but nobody was going to get involved there to protect him. It was, bad thing.
So I had a question.
Yes.
Greg was, I mean, his nickname was the Grim Reaper. He was an informant for 30 years. How was the government allowing him to kill all these people? I mean, just,
Yeah. Well, there's a level hierarchy and protocol in the government, just like anything else. The higher ups can always claim they didn't know.
okay.
Like, take
Yeah.
the agent that's dealing with him. He's going to do anything possible to further his career and be a hero, although there's a good chance he went over the line, as we know. But let's say he didn't, just that they were going to allow this, and the ends justifies the means in their eyes.
Okay.
Maybe that's how they feel. But they protected him at all costs. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
And really, like I said, I think the higher ups can claim they didn't know, but I think we know better, you know.
Turning a blind eye because
Yeah.
if it's geared
He did a
towards
lot.
another, you know, if it's
Yeah.
geared toward another mobster, then it's
Right. Yes,
We're
but
gonna-
he did a lot of damage to the family. I mean, he was responsible for them bugging Fat Tony's car, or was it? Let me say, I think it was Fat Tony's car. You guys remember that story, right?
No.
Was it either Fat Tony or Tony Ducks? Tony Ducks Corral. That he had the big black Jaguar. That Sally Avellino was his driver, and I was away with Sally Avellino. He told me the story too, but I didn't know Greg was responsible. There was a restaurant that the hierarchy of the Colombo family used to eat at every Friday night. Greg told them what table they sat at, where they can bug it. They bugged it, and that was those things right there were the beginning of the commission trial. That started a lot because there were a lot of conversations at that table. So as they're getting all this information, they're turning a blind eye. You know, and
so I guess that also brings the question then, how 30 years? If he's doing all this much damage and he's giving this much good information, why did it take 30 years?
well, here's what I think. Don't forget, his nickname wasn't the Grim Reaper when I met him.
Yeah.
Early on, he really didn't have a nickname. Everybody knew him as Greg from 13th Avenue. That's all you had to say. Oh, him. You know, they knew. Later on, as time went on, and really the war, he was called Schwarzkopf for a while, because if you remember General Schwarzkopf, we got him a general's hat from Desert Storm, and he wore it proudly. He wore it during the war. Then, you know, when it got to the point where he just wanted to kill everybody, we started calling him Hannibal. And he was okay with that. And the Grim Reaper stuck because, I mean, everywhere, I think Vicarina's side gave it to us because everywhere they turned up, somebody got killed, you know, and it was by him.
The Mad Hatter, too.
The Mad Hatter was another one. They called him the Mad Hatter. So he was relatively, I don't want to say below the radar, but he never took a captain spot. And I always questioned
Okay.
that. I always questioned that. He told me he turned it down. He never wanted it. I think if he would have took the captain's position, the government would have had to back off. Because now you're in a position where you're ordering the hit. You're ordering the hit. Now you're telling us, you know, tell on yourself. But if you come in and say, blame somebody, I guess they allowed that.
Yeah.
You know?
If you're in a conspiracy at that level, you have to go.
Right.
You can't take all the guys around
His
you.
own son is a captain.
His son, well, listen to this story. I was there the day Scappy came, and he knew he was going away. He's had this trial. He was going to be doing 100 years, and he had to pick a successor to him. So he calls both Greg into the diner. They go to the back table. Now, I didn't go to that table, but I heard afterwards what happened. At that table, Scappy told Greg Jr., I want you to take my position. Why did he bypass the father? Goes back to what Alley Boy said. He knew for 20 years. And I wonder if Scappy probably knew he couldn't take it. Or I do know he loved Junior, but I just don't see how he overstepped the father like that. Okay? And Greg told me when I asked him, how come they didn't make you the skipper? You know, I loved Gregory, but it didn't make sense to me. And I could talk to Greg like that. He said, I turned it down. I found out years later from the horse's mouth, Greg Jr., he says, no, he never offered it to him. And we're putting these pieces together too, even now, me and Greg Jr., like all these different things. How didn't we know? And then we should have seen it. But Scappy bypassed him at that table, but he needed somebody to witness it. You know, Gregory can't just go around saying I'm a
So now
captain,
the
so that's the one who introduces
The
him.
next obvious question is if Scappy knew,
Oh,
why was Greg
I-
not killed?
I said it when I was in prison facing life. When Alley Boy told me, him and his father knew. The first thing I asked myself, who else knew? Did Scarpa know? Did, other guys know? How did they allow it? I mean, I'm not looking for sympathy, but I got corrupted. I didn't
Sure.
start out a killer,
No.
and he corrupted a lot of other young kids too. I seen them. I seen the kids coming in, reasonably normal kids, but want to make money, maybe get sucked into making money, and it happened, But
Well, he was really calculated, and you could see the emotion. I've seen
Yeah,
your emotion
yeah,
as you
yeah,
are reflecting
yeah.
on a lot of that. And
I'll tell you
The
one
thing
quick
though-
thing that
go ahead.
Nick Pileggi said to me when we were talking about this whole thing, and he knows I wrote the book and the story and everything. He said, you were seduced twice. First by her, Linda, and then by him. And he's right, but it takes two, the seduction, you got to be seducible, is that a word?
well, and you have to take
Not
accountability for your own actions.
Oh, absolutely.
However,
Yeah, of
but
course.
there's
Well,
a difference.
and real quick, here's the thing too with informants. In the NYPD, with the feds, there's certain guidelines of who you can have as an informant. And if they're actively involved in organized crime, technically you're not supposed to
Right.
use them. Every time you make a, a payment to them, every time you meet with them, you're supposed to produce a report, put it in a file. Every time you pay them, there has to be a receipt. They have to sign it.
Right.
They have a special code name and everything else. And I'm really surprised. Somebody at DeVecchio's level, though, could probably really put the minimum amount of information in things and kind
Right.
of
He was
work
a
everything in his
supervisor.
head.
He was the head of the units.
And the same way he was feeding Greg information, if he was, if everything about what they think about him was true, he could limit the amount of information he gave to his group, other
Right.
groups, and maybe in the same way he might have given information to Greg, like, hey, you might not want to go around that guy.
Right, right.
Because this is the greatest informant that anyone's ever had.
Amazing.
You know?
But him and Whitey Bulger is the only other one that, it's the same story.
Right. But I think the difference, though, with Whitey Bulger is like, he was the guy you were trying to take down. He was at the very top.
Yeah.
Whereas Greg was a part of.
But what's funny? It's funny, and I get biased a little bit. They turned their eye from what he was doing to focus on the Italian guys.
Right.
He was ratting on Italian guys.
Right, the Providence
And-
guys,
And,
the
yeah,
other guy.
his crew were, almost untouchable, like our crew was under Greg's,
Right.
protection.
Yeah.
So,
And so you ended up, the value you had for the government was the fact that they were trying to find out about DeVecchio. They were trying to,
Yeah.
and that's probably the reason that you didn't end up in jail for.
right. Well, I listen. When I went to talk, when I spoke to my lawyer for the first time, they were, one of my lawyers was begging me from day one. I told him, stop coming to see me. I'm not looking to make a deal with the government. I'm not living that life. Just don't come and see me anymore. Keep writing letters. You write nice letters, but just leave me alone. I took on another attorney that was more, didn't want to deal with informants and stuff like that. He wanted to fight your case. And, we had a lot of legs to stand on. We had a lot of issues that it's harder in federal court with just the hearsay and everything.
Right.
And I told you before, I had no intentions, especially with Greg being out there. But once everybody started flipping and it turned out he was bad, there was no reason left for me. So I called them, they came, and they offered me, the first time I spoke to them, well, first they said, we don't really need you. They said, we got Greg and Conley. And I said to them, I'm a little nobody compared to them. I said, I don't know why I'm even in the same room. So they went on to tell me, this is what they told me. They says, we know the day a guy gets straightened out. Because I was saying I was a nobody. I says, what do you mean? Greg is the one that when the list goes around, and you're on that list as a proposed guy,
Right.
he gets them that list. So they knew, if you look, there's a family tree in 1982 that I'm on right next to Carmine and Sessa. 1982, I was 23 or 24. I was already proposed by Greg, maybe a little later than that, maybe 84. But the point is, it says associate of interest. So a few years goes on, and during the war, after the Nicky Black hit, they brought me and Jimmy in. They straightened us out.
Right.
As a reward or as a credibility thing, because I was sitting at the table with them. We weren't supposed to be if we weren't made guys.
Or a little more seduction.
We were in on everything that was going on. So we had this thing. So, coming back to what you said, I thought I would make a deal with them, but they said to me, "We don't need you. We got everybody else."
Right.
Then I says, "Well, what about the corruption that was starting to come out?" And then when I started giving all the things I knew about the telephone, the address, the addresses that we were getting from somebody, the scanner with the numbers,
Right.
they saw a lot. I told them I went and met him at the hospital. They must have knew. He must have put down he has a meeting or something, because
Right.
everything I told them added up. And eventually they took me in. But the first day, they offered me 0 to life. That was my deal. I laughed. I says, "That's a joke, right?" They says, "No, we have to go in front of the judge." I says, "No, thanks. I'll keep fighting this thing and try to get a 20-year plea or something," whatever I said to them.
Right.
They called me back in the next day, and all the guys are watching me come in and out. So I said, they just throw me on the bus. You know how they
Right.
give you the bullpen therapy and stuff like that. So the next day, I tell them, they says, "We can do 0 to 20. I still don't like it. I says, "But Jimmy's got to come in under anything." That's my partner, my childhood friend. I said, "Under any deal I make." They say, "Well, we don't need him. We want to capture him." And the funny thing is, they had no clue where he was.
Right.
0. They were embarrassed about that. They said it. Even Valerie Capone, when he finally walked in on his own, said, "Look, we can't do anything right." They wanted to catch him.
Yeah.
You know. So I walk out again. The third day, I come back in, and they have somebody else there, another prosecutor, who goes through the same thing, 0 to 20, but we can't do Jimmy. So I walk out again. They stop me. My lawyer brings me back in, and now they say that we'll leave the door open for Jimmy, but there's no guarantee he's going to come in, right? And I said, "Well, of course not. There's no guarantee," because I couldn't admit I knew where he was or anything like that either.
Right.
So I said, "But I'll see if I can get word out there and it gets to him somehow." But I knew I could. And they said the 0 to 20. And Stambolitis, that's who it was. George Stambolitis, the prosecutor, he looks at me and he says, "If you go through all this and you get 20 years, are you going to be happy?" I says, "No, of course not."
No.
He says, "That's why we put the 0 on there." He says, "If you do what you're supposed to do, we will fight to get you as close to 0 as possible." And I said, "And Jimmy comes in?" "Yes." So that's when I made the deal with them. And at the time, guys were getting time served. Guys were getting 4 years, 3 years. Carmine got 4 years. Sessa, who started this whole war. Sammy the Bull famously got 5 years.
Right.
So I'm assuming I'm going to get the same area, but they hit me with 10.
How about Jimmy?
Jimmy wound up getting time served, which he did. I want to say he did 5.
Okay.
So he did better than me. But again, a lot of it was the corruption. I don't.
You were kind of telling them stuff they didn't want to hear in a way, too.
Right. I don't think they wanted it all coming out until they were done with their trials. So they figured if they kept me in there, I mean, that's my opinion. But the other thing is, the judge that threw out the fire department test and made me wait 4 years,
Right.
he was my sentencing judge all these years later.
That's crazy.
So I might have been on the fire department instead. But yeah, he so the 10 years, I mean, I can't complain because, on a negotiation, maybe I would have got 20, maybe. If I go to trial and lose, I'm coming home in the pine box. They make sure they tell you that enough.
And now, how is life for you now? I mean, it's...
Life couldn't be better.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I own a gym, a fitness center that's doing well. Not going to get rich there, but I started, that was my starting point, a personal trainer. I was making a living. My son is back in my life.
Yeah.
My first marriage didn't make it, but I have a fantastic second wife, Kelly. That's all great. I wrote my book. It's been well received by Nick Pileggi, Terrence Winter, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese. I've been in movies, well, one movie and a TV show, numerous documentaries. I can't even count the podcasts, which I do just, out of some ways I think it's my penance in a way.
I know.
Yeah, it's like therapy,
That's
too.
what I was gonna- yeah.
Get it out.
Yeah. So, and I don't think I have to spend my life trying to make up for it, but, you know,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I tell you, I had the pleasure of meeting you, your wife. We went and worked out together. We ran
Yeah,
across the
yeah,
causeway.
We ran the
I almost
bridge.
had a stroke. And you were all some of the most gracious people I've ever met. I mean, I
Thank
felt
you.
really comfortable with you guys. And that's obviously a testament to who you are and who you've always been, I think.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad I had this opportunity. You, by far, out of all the people out there who are telling their stories, you do have, you can claim that you have redemption, and that obviously, you know, there's a lot of remorse in life, and
Yes.
but
We all have
you're obviously
regrets.
making up for it today. You have a beautiful family, and I thank you so much for coming
All right,
on.
thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right,
very
pal.
much. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Larry.
Thank you.
I think that's a wrap, guys.
Can I ask that one question about Linda, and we can work it in?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. You were doing a natural
All right, so
ending,
we'll
so
we'll do the edit
we
later.
can split it in maybe
Okay.
at some point, if you don't mind.
Well, that's good, because I'll tell you when I
I'm-
went the first one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know
Yeah.
that. So I do have one question. How did you and Linda, how did that end, and how did you meet your first wife?
Well, when just before Greg had gotten sick, I knew, so that was about 85, 86, so we were together about 8 years, Linda and I. And I knew I wanted to have a family life, I wanted to have a son someday, I wanted to have more than just being, I guess, a kept man or whatever it's called. You know, I wanted more. And she couldn't understand that. I gave you everything. I'm always there for you, and she was. I mean, physically, mentally, you know, whatever. You know, she was almost like a wife. But I just needed more. And when I met Christine, who was a hair cutter, worked right above the club, and you know, we hit it off real quick, real fast. And for a while, I was juggling three. I was juggling Linda, Christine, and the girl Anne Marie, who I was seeing, and I cared for her too, but I was really seeing her because I needed to have a girl around. I mean, I was worried the other guys were going to look at me funny.
She was
And I'm always with Greg and Linda at weddings. Wherever we went, I was the third wheel. I just felt so we could, you know,
You needed kind of a cover.
needed
Yeah.
somebody. But again, I liked Anne Marie. She was you know, it was nothing, you know. But when I met Christine, I knew it had to go. And it's a funny story. We go out to eat one night, and I bring Christine this time, not Anne Marie. And it's the first time Linda saw me with somebody else.
Yeah.
And Christine was a stunner. And we went to see Johnny Maestro, the Brooklyn Bridge. And the guy that put this little party together was friends with Christine's father. And Christine must have got it out there that we're really tight, we're talking marriage and stuff like that. So Johnny Maestro comes over and he starts singing that song to Christine, "Girl, I heard you're getting married." You know the song?
Oh,
The oldie?
oh, yes.
And
I bet Linda did not care
no,
for that.
she sunk in her seat. And she didn't talk to me after that night for a year.
Wow.
Oh.
Not boo, not hello, and it really put a strain on things, so I couldn't go pick up Greg at the house. But when Greg got sick again, well, when he got sick, it put us back together.
Brought you back
because
together.
the friendship and the love
Sure.
and the need for each other was there. So
Sure.
we got back together again.
That broke her heart at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, Christine and I had a short time together because of the war. And then I went to prison, and you know, blessed that she waited, you know, for my son's
Sure.
sake, you know, and
Yeah.
for us. But
Sometimes things happen as they should.
coming home, it wasn't the same. You know, 10 years is a long time. Different people, you know, and you got to move on.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the son's sake, you know,
Absolutely.
let him see two happy families instead of us fighting over nonsense, you know. So, but anyway, yeah, it's tough when I talk about my family, what I did to them.
I think personally, I know there's nothing that is harder than when you
Yeah.
know you hurt your kids.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Good. Very good.
Wow.
All right.
All
I think
right.
we're good, right?
Very good. Thank you.
Man, this was a long day, huh? Right?
Yeah.
Good.